Newmarket Charter Commission, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So the next, or first item on our agenda is for public comment. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak? I'm seeing none, so I will close public comment at 7:01. The next item we have is for acceptance of minutes. Everyone should have received a copy of our minutes from June 24th. Any changes?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of June 21st.
Second.
Yes.
Tony, you did have that one comment in the email that we should have said that the survey was not going out until, yeah, I did not make that edit.
Thank you.
The only thing I noticed, and I wasn't here, is that John Bentley's name is consistently misspelled, and Patrick's
The
name
first and the last name.
Oh, wait,
The
what?
first is spelt at the beginning, then the last is right, and then down below the last is wrong.
I'm not objecting to it, I'm just pointing it out.
I must have
So make those
corrected.
changes.
And then Patrick's name is missing an E in the very last sentence.
And then there was one item,
I'd be furious.
I guess I didn't print.
I was going to challenge the use of robust twice in the minutes, but I thought it was going to be petty.
And the only change that I had was, let's see if I can find it. That we should make a note that the survey wouldn't go out until we had finalized the issue with the communications.
Is there a final copy of the survey? I'm not sure we were distributed
I don't think I did, I'm sorry. I will do that.
that. And those are the two,
Previous
right?
minutes, Mr. Secretary, because I didn't edit John Bentley's name after.
Hey, Scott?
I didn't take these minutes, so.
Well, I know, but I just copied, this was just an edit of the last.
I think it's
Yeah.
upstairs, probably.
Okay, so with those changes,
I should not have rushed to
I know.
approve. And with those changes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of June 21st.
Second?
thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I have to abstain because I was absent.
Thank you. One
I will
abstention.
note my abstention.
All right. So our next item, we have a guest this evening. And Stephen Buckley from the New Hampshire Municipal Association is here to speak with us about charters, and I think you're going to focus on budget committee in particular. Is that,
Right.
am I correct?
I have a few opening observations I'd be happy to make, and a little bit of information about myself. I've been working for NHMA since 2014. I'm retiring in January, so this is one of my last hurrahs.
So they're
to do-
shutting down the NHMA when you
Yeah,
retire?
no, they're not. They're going to be going just fine. They'll be sailing along beautifully. And in part, really, the effort I'm going to give for your benefit tonight is driven in part by some work we've recently done for both the town of Salem, who adopted a charter recently, and we work closely with trying to advise them along the way, and also the town of Conway, which didn't adopt a charter, although they think they have a charter, and I can discuss that later if you want to. And then in part, the other part of my information that I can share with you is that I participated as a member of the town of Bow's Charter Information Committee. So back in 2022, the select board had gotten a number of efforts to re-adopt SB2, even though the town of Bow had rejected SB2 7 times. There was still an effort to push it forward again and got defeated again. And as a result of that, the select board said, well, let's set up a committee to inform the citizenry and what are the options for different forms of government. So I sat on that Charter Information Committee, and we came up with a number of materials. I know that Chris may
They
have
did a great job.
shared some of those with you. So from that, I guess I would say a number of things, because I know that was mentioned in the agenda that I may give you an update of what recent changes in the law. I think the big thing, which is kind of answered by the fact that you have a commission, is that there was a change made to the law in 2014, which clarified the difference between a charter amendment and a charter revision. A charter amendment is any time you're not changing your form of government. A charter revision is when you're changing your form of government. You have a charter commission. You wouldn't have a charter commission unless there was some desire to change your form of government. Now, Newmarket, from my reading of your charter, currently has, and let me make sure I get my notes right, a official ballot town council. So you have a town council with official ballot voting on some or all of your budget matters. So it's official ballot town council. So I would observe, consequently, either you're going to keep what you have, or you're going to go with one of the other 4 options. And that's why you have a charter commission. And what are those options? Well, you can have a pure town council form of government, which does all of the business, including what you currently vote on at the annual meeting. A budgetary town meeting, which is kind of a hybrid of a select board meeting with a select board with budgetary matters voted on by budgetary town meeting. You could have an official ballot town meeting, which is really an SB2 form of government. Bedford has it, and they've modified it a couple of years ago. And then you could have a representative town meeting. Those are really the options. And I do have a handout, which I didn't bring multiple copies, which kind of goes through my interpretation of all these forms of government, their attributes, which we used in trying to inform the citizens in our group, Charter Information Committee for the town of Bow. So I guess at the outset, I would assume you're either going to change your form of government or you're not. And I guess that's one thing I would just emphasize. In terms of your timeline, you have a set time period you got to do things. You were elected on May 13th, and you have 170 days from that day to come up with a preliminary report. And if I've got my math right, I always use a computer online to do this, you have to produce a preliminary report on what you're going to do with a proposed charter by October 30th. And you then have really 3 choices of things that you can do as a charter committee. You can propose a new charter. You can decide, nope, we're not going to propose a charter. Forget it. Not worth it. Or you can decide we need another year. So you have 3 choices. And you can do that between now and October 30th.
What's the second one?
The second one, you can, I got confused, so don't do it again. So you
New
can propose
charter.
a new charter. You can say, no, we're not going to propose a charter. Or that is, we're going to say, no new charter is necessary. We want to keep what we have.
Gotcha.
Or you're going to ask for another year, which you can do. So I guess just taking that into account, the 2 main statutes you deal with, in the procedural statute, which is RSA 49-B, which lays out all the details of how you do things. You have to submit a report to the Attorney General's office and the Secretary of State. There's a bunch of stuff in there. And you have to have an attorney who's knowledgeable about charter government writing you an opinion, and it's all in 49B. But then 49D is the one that lays out the 4 options. And again, I'm assuming that there's some desire in town to no longer have what you currently have, an official ballot town council, and to go with one of the other 4 options, which you don't have to do, but that's kind of where it looks like you're heading. So with that said, I guess I would just observe a couple other things.
Can I ask,
Yep.
what leads you to that conclusion?
Well, because you have a charter commission.
Right.
And you would only have a charter commission if there was a desire to have a revision. Otherwise, you could have just amended your charter, and that wouldn't require a charter commission. Because you can amend your charter without having a charter commission by voting amendments at town meeting, as long as you're not changing the form of government. That's
So,
how it works.
I feel like the general conversation in this community has been about every 10 years, you should have a charter commission to review the charter and make sure that it's aligned with the way that we want to accomplish business in the community, which does open us up to new forms of government. But this has been sort of at least in the 20 years I've been involved, standard, about every 10 years, there's a charter commission. Is that non-standard?
No, you could do it that way. If I look at the statute and say, what are the,
Okay.
what are the ways in which you proceed as a community to address your charter, you really, again, only have, well, there are two options. You're either doing an amendment or you're doing a revision. And I'm assuming that was the desire, and obviously I'm wrong, that the community wanted to have a different form of government, and that's why you have a charter commission.
No.
But you could certainly, as a charter commission, I guess I would say it's a little bit, I suppose, unusual if you go the charter commission route and then only propose amendments.
But that's what we've done the last two times we've done this.
Hey, and I would just say,
We prefer to call it unique, not unusual.
no, I guess I would say.
Unusual is what we do here.
Yeah, it's, every town and city is different. And well,
That's our brand.
like I was saying a little while ago, one of the things I learned recently, and I didn't even believe this was true, Conway believes they have a charter. And they do have a charter, but it's nothing more than an enumeration of what traditional town meeting is. But they call it their charter. And I thought, okay, well, that's fine. You can call it a charter, but it's not really a charter in the sense that you created a revised form of government. So I would say, if that's the route Newmarket prefers to proceed, I'm assuming, when you go the whole route of proposing whatever you propose, you don't have to go, I don't think you have to go the route of having, someone write an opinion letter about your change in government if you're just going to propose amendments. I don't think that would become necessary. I think it might be worthy to spend some time looking at 49-B and look at it carefully and saying, well, if we're not proposing a revision to the form of government and it's just amendments, then I think you're going to have to think that through. I think there's ways in which you can massage the language. I hate to put it that way, but I'm going to. You can massage the language in 49B as conceptualizing this commission coming up with a number of suggested amendments that you wish to propose and that the select board would agree to put on the ballot in 2026. But that's the division that I understand.
That's essentially what happened the last time.
That's what happened.
Yeah. Yeah, our report was converted into
A series of
that were-
amendments.
Various amendments that went on the warrant.
And the select board did it for you.
Yeah.
It wasn't like they were compelled to do it. See, it's a little bit different. As I understand the way the statute works, if you propose a charter amendment, that is a revision, it has to go on the ballot. I'm not entirely clear that the commission has the power to say, here's a bunch of amendments, select board, you're compelled to put it on the warrant. I'm
That's not what I'm saying at
I'm not prepared to say yes or no, that's how it works. I would have to spend a little more time in 49D to get to that answer.
I wasn't going to bring it up, but I noticed in one of your letters, and I don't remember who it was to, but I think you indicated the town manager was interested in a new form of government to manage our current budget issues, or something to that effect. I was surprised to see that.
Well, I'm not going to speak for Steve Fournier.
No,
okay?
it was in your letter.
Yeah, and again, I don't want to speak for Steve Fournier, and I just got the impression, I don't know where I got it, honestly, that there was, perhaps it was driven by my assumption that if you've got a commission, you're intending to revise your form of government, therefore it's one of the four that you don't have, and one of which would be the closest would be a town council form of government that carries out all the legislative duties, including budgeting. But I could be wrong.
That's how Durham does it.
What's that?
That's how Durham does it.
That's what Durham does it, right. And Derry. Derry and Durham are the, I guess I would call them the more pure form of town council. I'm not saying you can't do charter amendments through a commission. I would just say that I wouldn't have assumed that. And so I'm glad to understand that. So to get to the two things that you would asked about, having a budget committee. So long as, if you're going to have an official budget committee, and the key thing to understand, what is an official budget committee? Official budget committee has the power to limit appropriations by no more than 10% above the recommended by the budget committee. That is the key central power of the budget committee.
Say that again?
The budget committee, they're the ones who propose the budget in the traditional town meeting form of government, and you can't appropriate more than 10% above the amount
Oh, really?
recommended by the budget committee. They control expenditures, so you
Bottom
can't
line.
exceed it. So the idea of a budget committee is to create a group of knowledgeable citizens who can then decide what we think the town can truly afford in terms of taxes next year. And we give them that authority to both create the budget, and we recognize that through the part of the statute that does this, that we can't, as a town, or a traditional town meeting town, we can't raise and appropriate more than the total amount of the budget beyond 10%, with certain exceptions, and I won't bore you with these details. So, but you, as long as you keep your current form of government, that is, you have a meeting that votes appropriations, you keep that, you can have a budget committee. If you don't have that anymore, the Budget Committee Act doesn't apply. So a town like Derry, they don't have a budget committee. It's all the budgeting is done by the council, and there's no budget committee. So as long as you have that continued town meeting voting on budget issues, the law would allow you to have a budget committee.
How does that work with, school districts? And, because right now our school district uses the budget committee also.
Right.
So how would that work?
Well, so I don't know how you got into having a budget committee and whether that predated the town council form of government and when it occurred. But what I can tell you what the law says. The law says if a town adopts the official budget act, that's the way you do it under RSA 32. If you adopt the official budget act and there is a school district located geographically within that town, that authority of the budget committee automatically extends to the school board. That's how it works.
Which is ours.
And so I'm assuming that's the situation you're in, that when that came about and that was carried into the charter, that authority of the budget committee it extends to include the budget adopted by the school board, which in your school board, you still have a traditional town meeting, or is SB2? SB2. So, but it still has the budget committee authority.
Yes.
You can't appropriate more than 10% of what they recommend.
So,
I'm not sure
No.
if that's,
You don't think that's true?
no, we're not questioning the truth of it, we're talking the history of how it's operated inside Newmarket does not seem to be consistent with how you're defining the options.
I think the budget committee recommends, or doesn't recommend the budget.
our current process is that the
Process.
council and the school board each make up their budgets.
Yeah.
And present it to the budget committee.
Right.
The budget committee votes on it, yay or nay.
Yeah.
And then it goes to the voters.
Right.
But the
That is the appropriate.
That is the appropriate, that's how it works,
But the
because it's the
yay-
budget
yay-
committee's budget.
But the yay or nay is not, the population, the community can totally ignore the budget committee's.
But they can't exceed by 10% the amount
Yeah.
recommended by the budget committee. See,
That's how it
so
works.
at the floor of the town
Oh,
meeting,
wait.
you can vote to increase the budget for the schools, but it can't be more than 10% of the amount recommended by the
Right.
budget committee.
Here's what I think. I don't think we've ever had this. If the budget committee voted no on the budget that was presented by, say, the town council,
There you go.
right? If they voted it down, they would have to then, edit it in order to get, because they do not have like line item editing.
Ooh, that's
authority.
painful. That's not exactly how it's supposed to work. But the way it's supposed to work is that the administration prepares a budget through the town manager. And then the governing body, in your case, your town council, they then look at it. But it typically, the department heads want a lot more money than the manager is going to give them. And the manager is going to cut that back. And then the manager goes to the town council and says, this is what I want. And the town council cuts it back a little bit, who knows. And then the town council hands it off to the budget committee. Now the budget is in the budget committee's hands. And they have the authority to approve line items, decrease line items. And then And then, after all that work is done, they might agree, or they may not agree entirely, but they could agree to the bottom line as proposed by the town council, or they could disagree. But it is the budget committee's budget, as approved by the budget committee after their final public hearing. That's the one that goes to the voters.
So for people that have been on the budget committee in this town,
I mean,
has there been
That
line
has-
item
yes.
approval of things?
No, but
I
there
thought it was
have-
just bottom line.
But there
approval.
have been changes.
Yeah.
There have been
Yeah.
changes, but it's been to the bottom line, not to line items.
Well,
No.
yeah, it still ultimately, if you change the line item, you're gonna change the bottom line at some point. It comes down to the bottom
Yeah,
line.
I mean, you're kind of dancing, it gets you to the same place, right? You
Yeah.
can say, I don't like this line item. I mean, you're reducing the bottom line, and you've made it clear why you're doing that.
But then also
the council
administration
is
has
not
the budget.
required to spend it
What's
the
that?
way that the budget.
Right, but the council's not required, the council's just getting a bucket of money that they can then apply however they want, right?
Well, yeah, yes, I mean, that is true. The budget is approved, right? Now the budget, the executive authority of the town council or any governing body, they can move dollars around
Right.
within line items.
Yeah.
So they have that authority. So it's only an outline of expenditures, but if we've got more snow this year, or you can spend more on
Yeah.
plowing than you want to spend on, I don't know, recreation. So, yes, but it's still a bottom line budget. You can't overspend the bottom line.
One more question. So, the budget is $1 million.
Yep.
It was developed through what you're talking about, the administrator, then to the council, then to the budget committee. And the budget committee votes no. Or 5-6, or 2-3. It's never yes or no. Am I correct? It's the budget committee approves this 3-2.
Well,
Sometimes
I
it's
guess it's
unanimous.
not quite like that. Ultimately, the budget has to be, the budget committee has to approve a budget.
Yeah.
So if the council recommends a budget of $1 million, and the budget committee says, that's too much, we're only gonna approve $995,000, we're gonna cut $5,000, that becomes the budget that goes to the voters. And they vote on it. Now, they may not have, how many people in your budget committee, 9, 12? 9.
Nine.
So it might be a vote of 6-3 in favor of that budget, but it's still the budget as approved by the budget committee
Gotcha.
after a public hearing.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So 6-3 just shows that there was some dissension.
Well, there was some dissension in the ranks.
So the budget committee's not gonna vote a zero budget.
No, they can't do that.
They can't do that.
Yeah, that's impossible.
That I think is what you're trying to say, Al. They can't, it's not a question of saying yes or no. They're gonna do something with the budget. They may do nothing, they may do something,
But
but they're not gonna zero it out.
But the history, I think, has been that the budget committee can interface with the departments and the town administrator and the school administrator and ask
Yeah.
questions.
Yes.
But
Right.
they did not have the authority to limit the overall budget. They had the ability to say, after discussions, we either agree or don't agree with what's being presented to us by the school or the town.
The budget
reduced
committee.
it.
I don't think that's right.
Yeah, no, it's
They've
not.
reduced
Here's how it's played out in practice. I can't say if this is right or wrong. In the 10 years I've been doing this, I can think of once that the budget committee adjusted that bottom line amount.
Right.
I can think of plenty of times that the budget committee came close to voting do not recommend.
In which case they would have had to amend.
No, I don't think they do. I think they can just say, here's the council's budget, we're advancing it to the warrant, but we don't recommend it.
Yeah,
That's not
okay,
what he
there
said.
might be something
know,
peculiar
and that's-
in your charter that gets into this, and I haven't read that part of your charter. I've skimmed it a couple of times, but I guess I would, I was on a budget committee in my town, it's just not how it works. I mean, you get the budget, and you interrogate the town staff and the school board staff, and you either agree to it or not. Like, when I was in the budget committee, I was damned if I was gonna approve all that goddamn overtime for the police department. So I said, no, we gotta cut the police department budget, and no one agreed with me, that's the way it goes.
Right.
So, that's how it works.
I think that's the way our budget committee worked probably 15 years ago. And
Oh.
I think that it has changed over the course of that.
So maybe
That's part of our struggle.
their, you know, their incorporation of the concept that the council has more paramount authority, that somehow they feel they have to just either agree or disagree to whatever the council
Yeah.
proposes, but that might be also derivative of something in the language of of the charter provision that deals with the budget committee. I know there's a couple of paragraphs in there, so.
I think what's happened is, exactly, I think what's happened is, over the years, there's really so much spending is already committed, contractually or legally or otherwise, that the discretionary parts of the budget are really pretty small. And so it has led to a cultural feeling of ennui, if you will, with the budget committee. It's like, we're in here for hours and hours and hours with $500,000 of discretionary spending on pencils and pens and office
Right.
supplies. And what are we, so I think it's a cultural thing. It's just part of which is part of our struggle as to what to do with the budget committee, kind of.
I know I'm getting old and my memory is going. But I never thought we had the power back when I was on the budget committee to actually change the number. And we usually were given, if you don't like this number, here's what the budget's gonna be anyway.
The default.
Because it's a default budget. And you're presenting something that says if somebody gives me, proposes $1 million and I'd like to cut it to 900,000 and the budget committee has the power to do that, then there is no alternative budget unless you're saying there is some default budget
Well, you don't,
that says the budget committee can't limit
right
it.
now? So you do have, let's just incorporate that concept for a second. So, the budget committee prepares, they approve the budget. So the budget comes to the budget committee, they approve, and, in a lot of SB2 towns, which is generally true, many times the budget committee and the governing body see eye to eye, and they agree, okay, we'll agree with that number. Now, the default budget is a different number. Now, that's prepared by the council. That's a totally different number, and there's a lot of variables go into it, and the legislature's always monkeying around with it. So when the voters vote on the official ballot to yay or nay on the operating budget, they're either going to approve the operating budget or disapprove it, and you get the default budget. That's.
But if what you're saying, the process is in other places, or the general responsibility of a budget committee is to say, I am not gonna propose a budget that you're presenting to me. I'm gonna say less $1 million, because we have the power to do that if we have a majority. And that $1 million ends up being what's voted on, the $1 million less, because the budget committee has that authority should they choose to use it, though I don't think we ever have. And then my question is, then what happens with the default budget? Because in the past, the default budget sometimes has been pretty equal to or greater than the budget that's being proposed. So how could I propose something in the budget committee that's gonna be lower than the default budget would be?
Well, that's because you're biting your nose, you're cutting your nose to spite your face.
And they have been, yes.
So, and that's the interesting thing about the default budget statute. We currently read it. It says, and this was always assumed to be true, but it was amended back in 2023 to say that the default budget can be lower or higher than the proposed operating budget. Doesn't matter. So there are many times I've seen proposed SB2 operating budgets, $5 million operating budget proposed, and the default budget is $6 million. And, the voters will defeat the operating budget because we like the default budget. They can do that. So it's one of those realities.
So I'm taking us a little bit on a different topic, although I think it's still budget committee-ish, or it's related. And I don't know RSA 32 well enough, but I think I need to understand it better. You said that if we retain our current form of government, as opposed to going to like strong where it's legislative, that we can still have a budget committee?
Yes.
Does the RSA say can, or we shall?
Well, this is what it says. So the statute that governs here is RSA chapter 32, 14 to 23. And what the statute says is, the adoption of the official budget committee statute may only be by, quote, any town with a town meeting form of government, including those with a budgetary town meeting, official ballot town meeting, or representative town meeting pursuant to, and they give you the statutory references, or by a town with an official town council form of government, under which part or all of the annual town operating budget is voted on by official ballot. If you're not voting in some fashion on the warrant, by official ballot, on budget questions, you're no longer within the realm of having the authority to have an official budget committee.
So, but if we retain this form of government,
Yes,
we do not have to retain the budget committee, because that's
No.
a may, not a shall.
that's right. So you could decide, the actual option here is to either have an official budget committee or not. So actually, there's three options here. You can have the official budget committee, you can vote not to have an official budget committee, or you could fall into that category where you're not allowed to have one.
So did the town, I'm sorry, can I ask this?
Yep.
So did the town establish the budget committee through, was there some other warrant, or was it through a charter, like having it in the charter?
I don't know how you did it.
Is it possible to have it just by placing it as a paragraph in the charter that now we have a budget committee, or is there something?
Well, it's in your charter now.
So if we pulled that out of that charter, I'm not saying I want to, I'm saying if we did, like, then all of a sudden it's like we don't have a budget. Because we may, not shall.
I've seen towns, so there's another part of the statute which I didn't bring with me, which does discuss towns that wish to rescind having an official budget committee have to do it in a certain way.
But that's,
I'd
okay.
have to
It's not as
find that.
easy as just saying we're taking this off the charter.
I'm 100%, not 100%, I'm fairly certain there's a provision that says, if you adopt the official budget committee act, this is how you do it.
At some point, we must have adopted it.
And I think it's in 3214, if I'm not mistaken. I wonder if I could get your Wi-Fi here, and then I could look it up and tell you what it says.
As you're doing that, can you multitask?
Yes.
My last question for now is, do we have a Wi-Fi?
It's a secret, we can't tell you.
T-guest?
No.
SAU 31 guests.
Yeah, use the schools.
The schools is stronger.
I
I'm
got
on
T-main and
T-guest,
T-guest.
but
I don't know the passwords, though.
I don't know the password. It's been in here for forever. SAU 31 guest though, I should get it.
So if you go look it up, it's 32:14 is the statute that tells a town how to adopt the official budget act. And I think in it, there's a number of options that tell you what you can do. And it also has a paragraph in there that says, if you want to rescind the existence of official budget committee, this is how you do it. And I'm fairly certain it's in 3214.
So,
Good
if
to know that that exists.
if
We'll find
the
out.
town votes to rescind it, now the school will also not have a budget committee and not be required to
I
have one.
believe that's true. I'm fairly certain that's true.
Well, the school has a separate budget committee?
No.
It would just no longer need one, and it would go straight school superintendent, school board, town.
You would no longer have the intervening authority of the
Of the
budget
budget
committee to
committee.
control the budget for the schools. That's right.
But I'm sorry.
Town meeting votes to rescind it.
To the extent that I'm understanding this, unless there's something particularly in our charter that defines the budget committee differently, the budget committee as generally defined has the power to approve or amend the budget presented to them by the school or the town. And that's
Absolutely.
what will go up to the vote on what the budget committee recommends. So that if the budget committee were to slash spending in one or both courts and say, we're presenting this to the town for whatever reduction of taxes, that's what people are voting on. And if they defeated the budget saying the default budget is greater and we want that, then it would be the default, but it'd still defeat what's proposed by the budget committee as the final number.
Yeah, again.
And if you defeat it, you get the default. If you approve it, you get that number.
yeah, again, that, you know, if you have got an official budget committee, the budget that's voted on by the voters is the budget committee's budget, even though it was put together by the administration. And in an SB2 town, it's always going to have an operating budget as proposed and a default budget. Now, I just found the statute, luckily, the Wi-Fi is pretty good here. So to adopt the official budget committee statute, you have to have a majority vote for those presence, an article in the warrant, and I think it has to be on the official ballot. Voted shall be by ballot, but the question shall not be placed on the official ballot, so it's not by official ballot. And a town or district that has adopted the subdivision, that is, have an official budget committee, can rescind it in the same fashion. But you don't, so the problem is for an SB2 town, you only have a deliberative session where you can discuss and debate warrant articles and amend them, but you can't vote on them. So it would still be on the official ballot. So that's something you might want to explore with town council. You know, do we, if we want to rescind the existence of the budget committee, not necessarily saying that's a good idea, it may be necessary to do a separate warrant article to do that. On the other hand, is it possible to rescind the existence of your municipal budget committee through a charter amendment? You know, so you have, where is it? It's in section
11.1.
yeah, of your charter. Couldn't you just amend your charter saying, we wish to amend the charter by deleting the section dealing with the existence of the budget committee and rescind it? And I suppose that might be sufficient. You would want to have town council to make sure the extinguishment of the budget committee is in conformance with RSA 32:14, which would be an issue if that's the route you want to take.
The 32:14 seems pretty explicit, but you just read.
Yes.
That it requires a vote.
You want to lay it out fair and square.
Yeah.
But it could be the same vote you're having on the amendment. So that's the
Right.
thing. You could have, I could conceptualize, you know, one of your proposed amendments is to see if the town will vote to amend the Newmarket charter to delete the provision dealing with the municipal budget committee, section blah, 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 and to further provide this vote will also be deemed to be a rescission of the budget committee pursuant to RSA 32:14. I mean, I can certainly see that kind of combined warrant article would probably serve both purposes. It would amend the charter and also clearly eliminate the budget committee's authority, if that's the route you want to take.
Not planning board.
This is a lot.
Sorry.
Some of us have learned a lot.
Yep.
Well, yeah, and it's not the, it's, doesn't surprise me necessarily, but it's not the understanding I think the Budget Committee has had for the past 15 years that I used to be involved in it, was that we had a power to do something other than agree or not agree. We couldn't amend the number.
But
But the budget committees have amended numbers over the.
Well, they
last
have
15
through
years.
discussion with the administrators agreed
Oh,
on
by
the
vote
number.
recently, a couple of years ago, they changed it.
the sidewalk. Sidewalk.
Sidewalks.
The budget.
They
committee-
added money,
Yeah,
I
they
think.
added money. I remember that distinctly.
Right.
And deliberative session can amend the amount of the warrant
Yes.
article up to 10%, no more than 10%.
Well, no, but the total, always a bottom line amount. So it's, so you take the total amount of the budget, includes the separate warrant articles, including items that are taken out of the calculation of the 10% amount. And then if you exceed it at some point during the voting, which is done, the DRA looks at your voting, and if your bottom line of appropriations, separate warrant articles and operating budget exceeds by 10%, they'll start chopping the last warrant article adopted with money in it to get you within that 10, and they just go backwards. That's how they do
Oh,
it.
it's that arbitrary.
That's all they do. And by the way, if one warrant article puts you over, but not entirely, the whole warrant article is wiped out.
Oh.
That's how they operate, because they can't divine
Right, they
what were the
can't-
voters thinking. They have to just assume, oh, well, you're over by 10%, even though this is less than 10% in this one, but we got to do it, so they chop it out.
This has never been a risk for us. The last 11 years I've been the moderator, the budget from time to time, the bottom line number, particularly in the school budget, has increased, but never by anything close to 10%. A couple thousand, 10,000, 10,000.
Sure, that's pretty common. Yeah.
I've never seen a cut of deliberative session.
No.
Sometimes it increases, but generally it stays the same.
I feel like
Just
once they tried to. It was-
Yep.
It was for
It was
salary.
Roseanne.
There you go.
So I'm trying to collect all this in my head. So it sounds like to me that the budget committee has more authority than I thought it did. But as Tony brings up, culturally, it just doesn't use its sword. Is that kind of,
I think so.
okay.
That's
Well, the
what I
question
take.
is
One
whether
thing to
that's
be
been
aware
out of
that you
ignorance
have the
or out
power
of-
I'm sorry?
and you're not using it.
The question has been whether that's been out of ignorance or out of,
Yeah.
Right.
I think so.
the question has been
Right.
a choice.
Maya, I've been on the budget committee 3.
It's a reality. I mean, one of the things that was I won't say the word, out of me, and when I was on the budget committee, the way it worked was, when the operating budget came up for discussion at town meeting, the budget committee prevents the budget. It's not the select board.
Our town manager.
The chair of the budget committee would get up and say, and make the budget presentation. He would go through the whole budget, soup to nuts.
Our budget committee
We
doesn't sit up
kind-
there anymore.
Yeah, I mean,
Don't
our-
we
our budget
kinda-
committee used to be on stage.
Yes.
And they're no longer even up there.
And the
It's
town
just the
manager
school board
decided
or the
that
town
wasn't
council.
You're absolutely right. It's wow.
It's like we've been, the budget committee's been sort of administratively silent.
No, well, you know, I'm not recommending a budget committee revolt. I'm just.
No, no, no.
I don't want to be in that position. I'm just saying, that, in some towns, I mean, you should see what goes on in the town of Hudson. Oh,
Not
man.
that, yeah, no.
That
Not-
budget committee is
Steve,
just.
the enlightenment is that regardless of this conversation tonight that
Right.
we're getting educated on, if our budget committee is empowered, as you're suggesting, even if we weren't aware of it before, they can now do it, assuming we get a legal opinion that says that's true, and can go and recommend their own numbers on the school and the town, which has not been a power that we thought they had.
It's been a waste of time.
Yeah, and
But
and I think that's
it's
why we haven't had.
4
people-
years, 4 terms of
That's why we haven't had
wasted
the
time
people-
for me.
Be on the budget committee?
Yeah, it didn't matter. I listened to all the,
People aren't gonna run for something where they feel like, why am I sitting here and just to listen and whatever I say doesn't
Well,
matter?
now, there is some merit to having a meeting of the minds over budget approvals, and if,
Of course.
if it is the case that your budget committee, is startlingly, impressed by the work of the manager and the council, there's no reason they should disagree. I'm just saying you can. It's possible.
My, and I have not said the budget committee, but I've been a witness
didn't
to it
matter.
from both. That it feels like the authority of it has been sort of restrained and restrained and restrained to the point where it becomes almost like moot, right?
Well,
And
do you
I'm
have
not sure if that is
elected
by
or
plan
appointed?
or by
It's elected.
just.
It's elected, but we've had vacancies growing over the years because, especially on the budget committee, because people felt it was just, there was no power
It's a rubber stamp.
to really
Well,
get it done.
I mean, the one thing I would say about the budget committee, having been on the budget committee, it's a burst of intense activity. From the middle of December until the, last week of February, you're having 2 or 3 meetings every
man,
week.
you are so right. It is
It's
a big
intense.
deal.
And you get
Yeah.
this huge book.
Yep.
They drop on your desk. Oh, here's the school, and here's the town.
You're talking to people who served on it for years.
It's, and just like, and what is an FTE? I don't know what
Yeah,
that
yeah,
is. It just goes on and on. So it's a labor. There's no doubt about it.
Very helpful, thank
So-
you.
I'm gonna just try to move this forward a little bit, because we could talk about, kind of our issues all night, and we don't want to keep you all night. So, do you have Are there other subjects?
Well, the other subject was that I know the discussion was that there's a desire to have a different approach to your CIP committee.
I don't know about
Yes.
desire, they're questions.
Okay,
Yeah.
so just understand, and I brought the good book, so it's all right here in the good book. It's 674, I want to say 5, and 3 and 4 and 5. So the statute, first of all, if you want to have a CIP, the town meeting has to vote. We want to have a capital improvement
Yeah.
plan.
We do.
We've had one for some time,
And
and we have a committee.
by default, it goes to the planning board. At some point, the town meeting must have voted to instead have a CIP committee. And that committee is created through warrant article. Typically, this happened in my town, was the CIP in my town. When I was on the planning board in the town of Bow, the CIP was done by the planning board. Then the select board decided we needed to have a larger embrace of people rather than just planning board members. So they put an article in the warrant to see if the town will vote to instead have a CIP committee be appointed by the select board to include, and then they had a list of people that would be on it. 2 members of the school board, 2
Yeah.
people from, and they have the whole list. And they would be all by appointment, and I was on that committee for a number of years too, by the select board. And that's what you have. You have a CIP committee appointed by the council or the manager? I think it's by the council.
By the council. That's
Yeah.
pretty much from the inception. That's how it's been, to my memory.
Well, and that's fine.
But the
And-
school didn't participate in that until
Right.
we ended up getting the issue about sharing fees, right?
For impact fees.
It's always hard to get schools involved with CIP committees, and it's a struggle. But luckily, if you cajole them enough, you can get them to do it. But they don't like it.
Well, the chair of the school committee is with us, and if he didn't hear that statement, we kept it that they're under duress due to the impact fees.
I mean, I would say that the school board, I'd say, in the last 3 years, had an incredibly active representation on the CIP.
That guy.
Yeah, I was the chair of the thing.
Yeah, and that's incredibly important, because we've had that fight in our town in Bow, where, the school board just out of the blue proposes a new turf field for $10 million. And it wasn't in the CIP, it wasn't discussed in the CIP committees, and no one even knew it was coming about. And that's not the way it's supposed to be.
So I think that our challenge with the CIP, other than membership, again, is because, one, it does much like the budget committee does right now, like a rubber stamp on budget requests towards capital reserve funds, not actual approval of capital improvement plans, as basically a planning function. And it's that, is there a way we might, or is there towns out there that have, somehow via their charter, sort of codified the CIP as, or is it just through RSA, as having a planning function, not a budgetary function?
Well, see, I guess
CIP committee, I should say.
I just think the model that have been put in place by Dave Stack and the town of Bow, the CIP committee, has really done a good job of doing just what you're suggesting. That it has to be a plan, and the plan has to be a forward-looking plan. That it includes a number of elements. I mean, a couple of years ago, Bow, we did a road improvement study. UNH came out, and they had some computer program, and they ran this thing all over town, and they came up with this wild number. It was like $20 million we had to spend over how many certain number of years for road improvements, and people went crazy. But it was a good beginning point, a beginning to plan when we need to do these improvements. So I think it can be done to become a plan if you have the right people in the committee, and if you do it every year. And so it isn't just, every year the road agent comes in, or the public works director says, I want, 2 new backhoes. And then they either put it in, we'll buy them in 2028 or 2032 or whatever. But it can also be a plan that is also looking at, what is our infrastructure? What does our road networks look like? What do we need to do for sewer and water improvements? What do the bridges look like? And that really should be the function the CIP is doing. And in part, it is part and parcel of what the planning board should be doing as part of the update of the master plan. And in part, that's the reason why it's a good idea to have the CIP as part of what the planning board does, if they're well connected. And I think it's also dependent upon who you have as staff. If you have a really good staff person in the land use department who's really good at planning, or maybe you're working with, the Rockingham Planning Commission, are you in Rockingham or are you in
Stratford
Rockingham?
Regional Planning.
What's that?
Stratford Regional
Stratford.
for us.
And Jen Sis and her crew, they're really good with that stuff.
Yeah.
And they can, maybe help facilitate that long-range, planning. There were a couple of towns that I remember did long-range facility plans, and those facility plans then inform better the CIP process. Because so the CIP it should be more than just, we're going to put money into capital reserve, but it's an important part of the process.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing that it's very important for people who work on CIPs to understand, these are only proposals. A CIP is not a budgetary straitjacket. You cannot compel the select board or the budget committee or the House Council to put that money aside you think should be put aside. Now, one year, I got mad at the select board for not putting the money I thought should go into the capital reserve accounts. So at the town meeting, I voted to start taking money out of fund balance and put more money into the capital reserve account. They didn't like that, and they got really mad at me. They tried to kick me off the planning board. But it should be, a cooperative understanding. And I probably was overreaching what I was trying to do, but nonetheless, I felt it was important to get the budget committee, the select board to recognize they can't just ignore the CIP. But the people who are on the CIP committee can't expect dollar for dollar all the money that they recommend be going to capital reserve is going to go in the budget.
But the process, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I'm thinking back to the 10 years that I spent on the budget committee and the CIP, and CIP is not part of our planning function, though there are people who may think it's unnatural that it should be, but it's been appointed by the town council, who has no power over the school board, but whose members, there are one or two that are from the school that never participated in the CIP until after they wanted to share in the fee revenue. And we put a process in place as a long-term planner, as one of the many things I've done in my life, is to put a process in place to say, when are we going to need capital equipment and what's the forecast for the facilities, and then recognize there was a total separation between that process that said, here are the needs, and what a school administrator or a town administrator decided to fund the capital. That even though here was the process that said, this is what you should think about, the decision on how much money was taken into or put out of capital was the senior administrator of the town and the school, and there was no power of the CIP. And so, unless my understanding of how we've worked for the past 10 to 12 years is really off, we kind of have a really different mix and understanding of how those pieces of the puzzle.
I mean, I think if you look at the school capital improvement plan right now, it is a capital improvement plan. Look at the BOA. Like, it is a plan of like how money needs to be spent, how like it will be collected via warrant article over a series of years. It's like a 30-year plan. But then I come to the town meetings, and I'm like, I'm getting requests from every department for like wish lists of stuff, and I'm like, there's no coherent, as a community, where do we want to invest our money?
Yeah.
And honestly, it should be, here's where the CIP should come in, bringing the school and town long-term requests for how we think we need to, like,
And the
where
timing.
long-term money, and the timing, and like, and help create a unified plan. But the capital improvement committee at this point is basically told, here's our requests, approve the budget, it goes to the town manager, he says it's gonna be this much, and then it goes into the budget. Like, the capital improvement committee literally is not even rubber stamp. It is a like suggestion that the town manager then changes that and puts it in the budget.
Well, I don't know, it's a
Well, it's not a
long-range
plan,
facility
it's a
plan.
contribution or
It's
withdrawal.
capital reserve fund contribution plan, not a capital improvement.
Well, it's either. You can either contribute more money to the capital budget, or you can say, I'm taking money out of the capital budget to offset some of the operating expenses because we need a new fire truck or whatever.
See, but my
So-
point is that there is no coherent plan which undergirds it. It's
No, I
an
understand.
ever-shifting set of
So
requests.
we're having policy discussion
Yeah, sorry.
when we're here to talk about
Yeah.
what if any, so what I'm hearing is we have disconnected planning functions. We have disjointed. The question is, what if any tools are available to us in terms of charter amendments to help us, or processes generally to help us integrate and normalize, I guess, these functions? If the capital improvement planning process is disconnected from the master plan and the school district is doing its own thing, everybody has a plan, but there's no overarching plan. So the question is, what if any tools are available to us in terms of looking at our charter to help us, or looking at our processes to help us address these issues?
And as
Well, have you had this discussion that Jen says and her team at Stratford Regional Planning Commission? Because that's what they do. I mean, I think they could sit down with you and say, look, you know, I would go to her and her committee and say, look, we need assistance with long-term capital improvement facility planning. And, you know, can you develop a framework within which we can better understand our long-term needs
Perfect.
for improvements to buildings, roads, equipment, whatever it is. And then maybe what you end up doing is you make a charter amendment that says, and let's assume this is what her team recommends, you create a new committee called the Newmarket, you know, long-range planning facility capital improvement, whatever you want to call it, that's going to integrate these planning concepts with the process of the annual, you know, putting money aside in capital reserve funds, and see if that then becomes, you know, just another committee you create in your charter. Now, I would say, you have in your charter, because I saw this today, a section that talks about other committees, and it says the council has the authority and hereby creates the following committees, something along those lines. I think that's where you would put it, but this is kind of out of my realm. This is kind of a planning function, and I think that's what the Regional Planning Commission can really help you with. Now, you might have to spend some money and hire them to help put this kind of a facility plan together. In fact, there's another kind of plan that you do, and I don't think it's called a facilities plan, but it's looking at assets and determining what the value of your assets are, both property and equipment, and then planning for their future.
Yeah.
It's a replacement, yeah, it's a capital replacement. And
I
that's,
think that-
it's a purely simple capital plan, which takes into account inflation.
Yes.
Takes into account depreciable life. That's what we tried to implement, at least a little better in the CIP as a process. But if the end of the process says, here's the capital plan, and each of our senior administrators says, yeah, but I'm only going to put $12,000 in because I don't want taxes to go up. That's the way we process before.
That's always a battle.
Yeah.
And I
Well,
think that'll be a good, this will be a good starting off point
This
for
has
our
been a great
conversation with
session.
Bart
Yeah, that'll
in
be
2
great.
weeks. You know, that'll be a really great way for us to start that conversation.
And I know that those plans, there's a term of art of what they're called, because they're used in government finance. GFOA does these things, and National GFOA and New Hampshire GFOA, so, but I'm not a finance person. I wouldn't be able to give advice on that. But I'm sure, you know, the Stratford Regional Planning Commission could give assistance.
One of the things that worries me a little bit is, one of the things endemic in, for whatever reason in Newmarket is participation, and the thought of getting another group together to work with us on that. I don't know, I mean,
I literally just wrote this down. The theme that I'm picking up, based on this conversation of what's happening in Newmarket, I think about the woman that came last time in that committee that's all fired up and everything. And the fact that we basically can get people to run. I know there was a period where there's a challenge of the town council, but for town council and school board, like there's people running. Like, if people feel like the committee is a space or a place where they can actually do something that will make a difference,
Right.
they will run. So we have these two committees that feel like they have become rubber stamps or less, and that is where we can get no one to run, because they don't feel like you're doing it. It's like, why should I show up?
I agree with you, but from what I heard, and I may be heard it incorrectly, was we may want to think about a committee, a subcommittee to this group. Is that what you're recommending as a possibility?
No, I'm not
Not to
recommending
this
that.
council.
I don't want to recommend that.
Oh, okay, then I misunderstood.
It is information you could try to seek out, but I think that, what I'm suggesting, if you really wanted to have an integrated, long-range capital improvement
Right.
facilities plan, that's a separate function. That's not your job as a charter commission.
Right.
No, but I guess when it comes to the charter, what authority do we have to, in paragraph D of section 11.1, like make it clear what the role of capital improvement program committee is? Or is it just referencing the RSA?
No, I think you could craft the language of what your CIP committee to be. It doesn't necessarily have to be within the statute. Now, just read the statute for a second and understand what it says. It's fairly broad. What it provides is, the capital improvement program shall classify projects according to urgency and need for realization and shall recommend a time sequence for their implementation. The program may also contain the estimated cost of each project and indicate probable operating and maintenance costs. That's a big part of what does not happen a lot of times. And probable revenues, if any. And it goes on to say, as well as existing sources of funds or the need for additional sources of funds for the implementation and operation of each project. The program shall be based on information submitted by the departments, agency of the municipalities, and take into account public facility needs indicated by the prospective development shown in the master plan of the community, as well as printed by other municipal land use controls. That's really broad language.
Yeah, and
It's all right there. So it's just a matter, perhaps, of emphasizing some of these concepts in the language, if you wanted to amend that part of your charter and emphasize those elements.
that is helpful.
And
Yeah.
that'll change the performance of the people within, a better understanding of their roles and responsibilities.
Perhaps,
If
you
there
know.
was if there was a desire to eliminate the capital improvement committee and make the planning board the way they're set up, go back to the way it's set up in the statute initially, would that require a charter amendment, or is that something that goes on the warrant?
Well, again, what the statute says, it doesn't give you a lot of details on how this is done. So the statute only says, first of all, you can't have a CIP unless the planning board, the local legislative body may authorize. So the statute is very one sentence. The local legislative body may authorize the planning board to prepare and amend a recommended program for municipal capital improvements.
And the legislative body is the
Is
town meeting or the town council?
No, it's the town, well, okay, well, that's a good question. Okay, so,
Because there's governing bodies and there's legislative bodies.
right, so your charter, I think, would primarily designate, in this instance, the council as a legislative body for the adoption of something of this type. Because, if I understand your charter, the only thing the voters vote on are budgetary matters.
That's correct.
And so your council adopts everything else. So that means your council would either vote to keep your CIP as currently created a CIP committee, or vote to have it sent back to the planning board. I suppose,
The CIP
Yeah,
is
the planning
not
board doesn't have enough
function
to
of
do.
the planning board
Yeah.
today.
I know that. So I suppose, if you went back, if you went to the town council form of government, you keep your current, again, you are an official ballot town council. You could put in your charter, I suppose, language that would provide that, notwithstanding the authority of the, or you would redelegate, I suppose, let me think this through, I suppose you could redelegate to the voters the power to make changes of this type, or simply say that the charter is hereby amended to designate the planning board as the agency in charge of the CIP. I think that's what you would do. You would just take out the authority currently it's residing at the CIP committee, and say, now henceforth, there'll be no more CIP committee. The CIP committee will be done by the planning board. That might be the simplest approach, and that could be a charter amendment.
That's a huge, huge addition to their current load already.
They're already overloaded.
They're pretty busy.
overloaded.
Right,
Well,
yeah, I
Huh?
mean, that's,
Sort of a big-
I'm just spitting out the possibilities, I'm not
Yeah.
advocating it.
there are, to me, there are a whole bunch of what are the powers that these committees actually have. How are they administered today and how have we used them? Because there's a great, if I go through all the weird things that are in my mind right now, if, regardless of who owns CIP, if their recommendations can get superseded by someone else who puts a budget together and chooses to reduce the amount of capital infusion or take more money out for their own purposes. That's
Right.
just issue one.
but,
And issue two is when you approve a budget amount, which the budget committee in theory can say, I don't like that budget amount from the school or the town. I am gonna get enough people in the budget committee to vote a lower number. And that's what the people will go and vote on. You may end up significantly changing the amount of people who you have as candidates for these jobs. Okay?
No question.
And so
Yeah.
that how all that
No question.
structure works together and what you're truly empowering them with versus rubber stamping, it's a potentially hungry ballgame. That's a good thing
Well
to do.
I mean, I will go back and say that the budget committee always had that power though. They didn't use it, but they had it. And,
They were unknowledgeable of
And
that.
deliberative session always has the power to change the numbers as well.
right, and that hasn't been really, I mean, handful of times.
So I don't want to get stuck in this vocabulary that we're just taking, that we need to take what we're fed. We need to eat what we're fed. We don't need to. We've been doing it, but we don't need to.
Right. And my one other point that I feel like I need to make as far as the CIP, having sat on the council and gone through those numbers, it would be almost impossible to recommend a budget with the full menu of CIP recommendations. It would be impossible. There would be a revolt in Newmarket if that were ever the case.
Which is why-
Absolutely, Tony, and that's one of the reasons leasing has come in, to be able to dematerialize a capital budget and make it an operating budget, and that's been used by many organizations over the years to play numbers games.
But, and here's where a true capital, which if we amend the charter to create the deliverable of the capital improvement program committee to be an actual capital improvement program, which is not actually called out in any way, shape, or form here, that creates a coherent program that would undergird, and probably, the council would probably get much different numbers from CIP, because they would have already done the planning efforts, as opposed to just, here's what everyone wants, and it all seems like a good idea, you decide what you want to do.
Give better service to the council.
Yeah.
Dan?
I mean, yeah, echoing sort of what, the issue with CIP starts with the fact that nobody takes it seriously, and that includes the department heads. So they come in with a Christmas list, and we all know, we've had kids, we know what a Christmas list looks like, and that's where it starts. And then the CIP committee knows that it's not going to be taken seriously, so they just say, oh, that's a good idea, that looks like a good idea, that looks like a good idea, and by the time it gets to the town manager and the council, it's a rubber stamp Christmas list. If it had some binding effect, first of all, the department heads would have to look at it a lot more seriously when they formulate it to begin with. Binding effect isn't what I want to say, but imagine, and I have no idea if we could do this in the charter or not, but we had a rule that said everything the CIP committee recommends, the council has to go on camera and vote up or down.
Yeah.
Well,
Or they have
it
voted
puts a
without
discipline
plan.
into the process, starting from a very early level, if everybody knows that it has to be taken seriously.
It's throwing the puzzle pieces up in the air and having them come down in a much more coordinated way. Whether it's budget committee or CIP or planning.
They have a budget, right? They have a CIP for their department, right? And so I think that's they've already got it, they don't need you.
Well, I would say that in my experience on the CIP, some department heads would come with, here's my multi-year budget for it,
Yes.
and others would come with every year a new set of requests.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, well, what is this now all of a sudden?
Yeah.
Do I need this?
Do we, I'm looking at the time, and I know it's getting late, so are there any other questions that are not maybe policy?
Were there other questions that we have for him?
Yes, for Steve.
Oh, like your pre-set of questions that we sent, was it just those two committees? or-
Those were the two that I was led to believe were the most pressing. I guess I would say, in summary, is it possible to create some kind of hybrid committee, CIP, Facilities Planning Committee, that has some real authority to compel their decisions be included in the final judgments on the budget by the council and/or the budget committee? I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm not sure about that, but that might be worthy of being explored. It's possible some other, there's not a lot of town council towns that they've done this. I'd be curious, what does Derry do? I'd want to know, how does Hooksett handle this? Because Hooksett and you are in the same, Hooksett, Londonderry, Merrimack, and Newmarket are all kind of, I think, similar. I'd want to figure out how they're doing.
What, that again, Hooksett?
Hooksett, Londonderry, Merrimack, and obviously Newmarket. I think those are all towns that are kind of like Newmarket in so many ways. I characterize again them as official ballot town council towns. And maybe want to learn from one of those.
Yeah.
Do any of those have a CIP model that seems to work appropriately? And also Durham. I find out what Durham does.
Yeah.
In Newmarket, we typically consider Durham to be a negative example.
Oh, so.
We have an artillery piece pointed at them. There's a reason for that.
Yeah, well, the people in both do the same thing about Concord too, so I know how that works.
The answer to all this is, to me, very simple. We need a budget committee that is educated and very active, because they recommend the budget that's going to get presented. And if they insist upon, this is policy, if they insist upon asking hard questions about how is the CIP integrated into this, how is this long-term planning being done, that would drive every other discussion. An educated, active budget committee. To me, that's what I'm hearing out of all this.
I think it's an educated active capital improvement program committee as well, that is integrated, closely aligned to the master plan.
But they don't have the authority that the budget committee does. The
They don't
budget
have the
committee
authority.
recommends the budget that goes before the voters. That's where the rubber meets the road.
That's the revelation.
Yeah.
Well, there's an additional one as well, and that's why I think it's gonna take some thought. If in fact, when you have a budget that's voted for approval, it's not a line item budget, even through the budget committee. So if we just said hypothetically, the town budget that we just approved was $2 million based on this line item series of budgets area. But in essence, we're approving $2 million. And the town administrator or the school administrator can spend that the best way they think, not according to the line items. Then your capital infusion disappears unless it's a separate part of the
But you can't
council.
control that. The budget committee can't control the expenditure of each line item. Nobody can, because you get 6 feet of snow in a single storm
I
or whatever.
understand, but what I'm saying to you is if you had it, and this is, I don't want to hold up the conversation, but if you have a CIP make a recommendation,
Yeah.
we should put $500,000 away for these 17 capital projects. We
Right.
need these done for the next 17 years. And that's approved, and the town administrator or the school can say, well, I'm not going to put it in the capital fund, I'm going to use that for operations.
I'm
Then
not
you have to have the stream
Not
of
sure they can
CIP
legally do
approved.
that.
Capital goes on as a separate warrant.
Yeah, that's right. Those are separate accounts. I'm not sure
Yeah.
you can
Capital reserve
mix
funds are different.
operating and capital
You actually
accounts.
To use them is, but as part of the budget process, I don't think we vote on approving a separate capital, positive or negative, to go into the.
So that's a good point when it gets to the, I know in the school budget, there's two
Right.
different warrants for the operating budget and the capital reserve fund. Is
Correct.
it all, because you're
It's all
right,
in one budget for the
contributions to
town.
capital reserve, and it's all in one budget in the town warrant. But you're right, you cannot, once it goes into the capital reserve fund, town council is agents to expend, and without a vote from the town council, it cannot come out of there for the explicit purpose
Right.
as
Right,
written.
and
by
all
the-
I'm
That's a
saying is we
separate
have to
pocket.
understand
Yeah.
how all the
Separate
pieces
bucket.
fit together before you.
I guess, could they redirect it before it gets deposited into the,
Well, it's the budget committee that can empower the CIP.
yes. There's a trifecta, budget committee, planning board, and CIP, they can actually drive a lot of positive change. If they're empowered.
If they feel empowered, they are empowered.
They are empowered, they feel empowered.
Well, thank you so much.
Welcome to
You've
Newmarket.
given us a lot to think
I
about.
feel like I've scrambled things more than anything else,
No,
but.
Well, you
no, I
did.
think it was really helpful.
Ferment is good.
Yeah.
Regardless of your
Remember the
intent,
dirt
this
she was
was
underneath.
excellent.
Yeah,
I'm glad.
remember the compost pile.
Yeah,
Getting us thinking.
yeah, there's a lot of information. We appreciate it.
Okay, well,
Never.
And enjoy your retirement.
Yeah.
well, it's a few months away still. Yes,
Thank you, Steve.
yeah.
You're free to go.
All set?
All set. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we've got to talk about revenue.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
Cris Blackstone's up next. Thank you for,
Before I sit down, as your Conservation Commission presenter about this, and I don't know if this is fair or not, but I will say, I would have never joined the Budget Committee or the CIP had I not thought that those were two organizations that are phoenix from the ashes.
Great. I think we need to get Al Zink in the budget committee.
Vote on that while he's gone.
Yeah, that's the perfect time to vote on it.
Yeah, he's gone, he's gone.
so I asked Cris to
Sorry, Al.
come and talk about, again, just like our last meeting, when we had Deborah Smith come in, asked Cris to come in as the chair of the Conservation Committee, although she's also on the Budget Committee, to talk about your volunteerism and
So when the invitation first came, oh, come talk, you're chair of the Conservation Commission, my mind went to, oh my God, we got to save the turtles, we got this water thing, we got stormwater, we got, oh, we're going to buy this piece of property. So I was thrilled to really have it narrowed to what we do as part of the volunteer spirit to get people involved. And when I say volunteer, the things I'm going to say
That's a
about the
complete
budget,
one. That
about
one
the
goes all the way.
Conservation Commission, I'm including in volunteer also people like you who are on boards and commissions, okay? Because some of the things I think we do effectively on the Conservation Commission do also pertain to how to get people to run for elections or to put their name in on that little piece of paper to Wendy saying, I want to be on this committee, and have the town council vote to appoint or nominate people for various committees. So volunteer really does encompass when you have people do roadside cleanups or help build a bridge over a wetland area or do like Newmarket Cares Day, as well as everybody elected. Okay, so those are all volunteers. The three handouts I'm giving, I'm going to try and summarize, and you can maybe read them, or some of these points will be triggered if you look at them again after this presentation. But the quick movie trailer version of this, the two overarching ideas I think that make volunteerism successful in cultivating volunteers for the Conservation Commission are, and this one's tough and it's big and it reoccurs through all these three pieces of paper, to stop responding to decline. Just stop responding to say, oh ho hum, nobody comes. Oh ho hum, we don't have enough people. If you have three people that are kind-hearted, busy, active, and giving you time, focus on the fact you got three people, and then you ask them, what did you like about this? What would you do next time? Will you come again? Will you bring a friend? You got six, and then it becomes this mathematical thing, and pretty soon you have to have a police detail to have people park their cars in a certain place to come to your event. So focus more on what can you do to appreciate who you have, more than this woe is me thing that's just prevalent about there is a decline. The other overarching idea I think is very successful with the Conservation Commission is to let each member of that commission, or volunteer when you cultivate volunteers, work from their strengths. And that sounds easy, like, oh, yeah, we do that. But how often when you're setting out for a volunteer event, do you say, well, we're going to need about 10 people to do this, we're going to need 4 to do this, we're going to need 6 to do this, and 2 to do this. You outline what are you going to need. For all you know, somebody that would love to come and volunteer actually is a great graphic artist. But you didn't think of that because you don't know anybody who's a graphic artist. So, well, we probably don't need it. We need 4 people to help with bringing the food and the coffee that day. All right, so it's more of if you build it, they will come, and who do you have, and you ask people, what would you like to do? So one of the papers I handed you is actually the advance copy of what our Conservation Commission members are going to get at our meeting later this week, which is called the Interest Survey Form. All right, it's anonymous on purpose in the beginning because what we're trying to do is have the
Excuse me.
people, sorry,
Ken,
yep.
I'm not sure I know which piece of paper.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
We have, some of us have 3 pieces of
You should
paper,
have
some of
3.
us have 2.
Oh,
And
dear.
some of us have none.
So who's not passing paper?
I have 2 of the pieces with extra copies.
Which side did you start on? When you, well, it's his fault.
I
I was
handed 3.
putting them all together, and Zing Ding here wanted to pass them all down together. I was gonna do all the work as the
I
secretary.
did better as a 4th grade teacher.
Zing ding.
Zingy dingy doo-doo.
Was he in your class?
Can't make this up.
I'll tell you what.
I'll look on the
Let's review the pieces of paper. Let's stop, wait, whoop. Okay, the first piece of paper you have starts with facts about conservation commissions in Newmarket.
I don't have that one.
I'm gonna look over with Dan, so you look on the stuff.
Oh, good gravy, epic fail.
Yeah.
Al,
Here you go, Al, here's yours.
Look at a rock.
Okay, so this first page, right? Facts about conservation commissions in New Hampshire.
Got it.
I thought it could be interesting for you folks to just to hear and think in case there's ever a Rec Connect trivia question. You might like to know that the first conservation commissions, the first one was Hollis in 1965. 18 followed the year later,
Wow.
and Newmarket's was formed in 1971 by a warrant article. Speaking of warrant articles. So, you know, Newmarket was not far behind, and Newmarket has been very active and very successful through this whole flow. All right, so that's the first piece of paper. You can read these things on your own. I wanted to say that one thing the Conservation Commission commissioners have to realize, as does a CIP or a town council or any commission, you select priorities, and within those priorities, you then select projects. And people often put the project way before the priority. It's far more glamorous to say, we're going to have a turtle fest, than it is to say, oh yeah, we need to save some natural wildlife, some habitat, we need to preserve habitat for some wildlife. That's a priority, but the project then is the day-long event where you have 60 people come, and everybody feels good and buys a t-shirt, and John Herman is thrilled because he hasn't seen so many people at one time in one place wearing a t-shirt of his artwork, right? So that's very glamorous compared to we must save habitat or preserve habitat. There's a lot of work in that priority. And also conservation commissions aren't regulatory, so our volunteers are doing something that's for the greater good and might be finite. Okay, because some of the priorities of things that we do happen and then that's it, that was done, they were either satisfied or the interest isn't there any longer. We also have new priorities that are going to need a whole new set of volunteers, and precious few people, unless you're Lindsay Butler, are really trained in what stormwater management really means. And I will say that Municipal Association and Primex both have great workshops that are free and available to us as members for learning those things as volunteers or as board members. So I would highly recommend you look at workshops for new members of any commission or any committee to see what's available for that kind of training. And the Conservation Commission also has the New Hampshire Association of Conservation Commissions, where we learn a lot about how do you work effectively with volunteers and not to really redo a topic which is borderline controversial. How do people of a certain age group, a certain vintage, shall we say, deal with a bunch of 20-somethings? So to that end, if you look at page, the page that's pretty text dense but simple sentences, what we know, what we think we know, what we don't know, and what we ought to know about volunteerism. And one author, Sarah Sladek is really well known in this topic, in this field, and she's got 3 books that are just fantastic. I would, if nothing else, read the Goodreads synopsis of those 3 books. The main topic in her books is nothing is going to turn off people, let alone of what age group, faster nowadays than saying we're going to meet on the 3rd Thursday of every month. And we have to do it based on when we reserve rooms. But if you can avoid that to get volunteers, you're far better off, because it's just not a thing. People nowadays want to be more freewheeling, more carefree. They might try a book club this 3rd Thursday of this month, but really next month they'll come to your thing if it's a Tuesday, because Thursdays, that's really kind of like the start of their weekend. This has become a very amorphous thing, very controversial and tough to work with, but it's proven with every possible survey from any possible source you want to research. But it's counterintuitive, because certain mindsets say, oh, I like my calendar really regular. I want to get my new agenda book in October. I want to blast through and mark every 4th Thursday for a certain thing. But that preempts a lot of people from joining your group. So when you're looking for volunteers, you really have to put away your own ideas about when should they meet to learn what you want them to learn, to do what you want them to do. Yeah, Patrick?
How does that work with the public meeting law, though, if you're switching around and meeting all the time?
The public meeting law just says it's going to be posted as a meeting, X number of hours or days, whichever theory, whatever you subscribe to before your meeting. You can do it. It doesn't have to be the same whatever. Moreover, in New Hampshire, you don't have to have an agenda. You just can post the meeting and say, here, our meeting is going to be this day. Is that the best practice? No. It's wonderful to have an agenda so people know, like, oh, I'm going to tune into that, or go in person, or have something, there's something there that I want to talk about. But you can do it as long as you post them in time. So you require on the you're depending on the Wendy's of the world, or Bridget in planning, or whatever it is, whoever it is, to help you get those meetings posted. But talking about volunteers, back to volunteers, which Tony wanted me to focus on, you don't have to post that you're training volunteers, right? You've done what you did with social media, or what you did with phone polls, phone trees, or however you got your volunteers. They know who they are, you know who they are, and you get them together. Another interesting thing that's going on in New Hampshire right now, already for a few years, is the Volunteer Coordination Association, a group called Nature Groupie, which is out of UNH, and it's really interesting. When that first started, I was in the group that thought, oh, that can't possibly be true. You want a group of volunteers, you want some volunteers. I can't just rely on the Sunrise Sunset Center. I need more people than are going to volunteer for my project, meaning Conservation Commission project, than might be at Sunrise Sunset Center. Nature Groupie will put a bulletin out for you that says, on this day, Newmarket Conservation has a group of people that's going to clean birdhouses out in open fields. And I thought, who cares? You live in Lincoln, New Hampshire. Why are you going to travel down here to do the birdhouse clean-out project? Hands down, more people respond from out of the initial area, the immediate area, than in the immediate area, which I found hard to believe, but it's a fact, and all the data is there. The people who want to clean birdhouses travel to do it. The people who want to do a roadside cleanup travel to do it. The people that want to look for monarch butterfly cocoons on the underside of milkweed leaves travel all over the place to do it. So we have been really successful putting bulletins out to Nature Groupie to have people come and do something that is in their skill set, interest set, or fortunately we have a handful of people that will show up and they say, oh yeah, I've been wanting to come to Newmarket. I heard about X, and I can't say restaurants by name, but they've heard about something that was here, they want to come try it, and so it's really great as far as the economy goes for the concept of nature economy, which UNH has a woman very well known in her field, Shannon Rogers, who writes a lot about the nature economy. And what's it worth in your town to have trails, kayak rentals, all these things that seem like the fluffernutter fun things that we just have and take for granted. What's that worth in dollars and cents? And she goes so far as to extrapolate health benefits and populations that really get outdoors and do things. What is, not counting obesity, but what are some health benefits of relying on nature for your volunteers' efforts? So Nature Groupie does offer a lot of volunteer training opportunities. That's something that this Conservation Commission wants to do more of. For instance, Brian Ward from the Select Board recently did the cemetery cleanups of invasive plants, 2 different cemeteries. So tagging with him, it's going to be really interesting to have somebody from UNH come and really talk about what are the invasive plants and how are you actually supposed to get rid of them. We're lucky in Newmarket that Ellen Snyder has been on the state commission for invasive plant removal. And it just slays. Once you start recognizing an invasive plant, we call them the 45-mile-an-hour plants or the down 93 plants. Once you see an autumn olive and know what it looks like, you can be on 93 and say, there's autumn olive, because you just recognize them and you see them. The unfortunate thing is we still see people, especially in springtime, with piles of some of these things going into the town dump pile. And you're not supposed to do that. And I'm not trying to be an alarmist, but we really have to teach volunteers a whole lot about, just like the boats, they check all the propeller blades, the backside of them when you go to a different water body. The tiniest little piece of knotweed can stay on you. You pat your dog, the dog goes outdoors, it gets in your yard. The tiniest little piece can survive without light or water for several months and then grow like a banshee. And grow, I mean, if you drive to Ash Swamp Road, it's a lovely spring day and there's little shoots, and aren't they lovely? No, they're not. They're now like over my head. And the other bad thing they're doing as far as turtle rescues go, they're shading out poison ivy. So the poison ivy's trying harder and harder to grow. It's becoming more and more virulent because it's putting out stronger and stronger roots to get more nutrition, more photosynthesis. That's why when people say, isn't the poison ivy leaf very waxy this year? Yes, it is. It's stronger than it's ever been in the past, partly because the knotweed is competing with it for the space. So we have a lot of training to do for volunteers about pick up the turtle, you cross the street, you hold it very carefully, low to the ground, and then you have to think of yourself as well. Where are you putting it? It'll crawl. If you just barely put it across the road, it'll crawl the direction you're facing it. But that's part of the volunteer training. And it's so fun to work one-on-one or with a small group and have people understand some of the things we're asking them to do and what's some of the import of what we're asking them to do. Newmarket Cares Day is something that people are familiar with, and it's something that's really wonderful to see the group of kids grow and grow and grow, and it's kind of an ongoing thing and a badge of honor to have done it more than 1 year. And the new kids coming up are learning as much from the initial group, the oldest group, as it's almost like in the British school system, the older children training the younger kids. But we've overheard great conversations of what they're saying. They're passing on real facts, not just like, it's not that important, you can get away with doing it this way. They're really adamant about the training they've got and how they do things. Marketing an event before, during, and after is really important. Not that we're ever going to have another Turtle Fest, but that people read about it and say, oh, that was cool, that sounds cool, oh, I couldn't go, it was raining that morning, I chose not to go. Sounded wonderful. Oh, what's next? So I will tell you that we are starting with what we're calling right now Next Fest, because we're going to have the same event, not in honor of turtles, but some other aspect of the natural world here in Newmarket with professional speakers, walking trips, walking tours, and yet another John Herman t-shirt, which he just agreed to do. So we're proud and happy about that. Another successful angle I think we're implementing with getting our volunteers is borrowing some common practices from other boards and commissions. So it sounds simple enough, but for instance, when you look at the agenda for town council, one of the things toward the bottom says closing comments. That's a chance for each counselor to say, I went to this workshop, or I went to this event, or I went to the Sunrise and participated in the Fenway Grand Opening Day barbecue. Or what are you doing as a person that's almost like your own professional development? But that also lets volunteers reflect on that and think, oh, that was important. That person went to the Sunrise Sunset Center and had the hot dog on the Fenway opening day that they watched on TV. Oh, I could do that, right? Volunteerism, we have to strike down the idea that you need to be an expert in the field. Because a good thing about our Conservation Commission is we have people with a lot of expertise, and we've really cultivated membership by saying we need a wetland scientist, we'd love a marketing person, we'd like a writer, we'd like this, we'd like that. We don't want volunteers to think, Kelly, I'm not a wetland scientist, how am I going to help traipse around out there and help map or help mark what a vernal pool is? I'm not an expert. But when you hear the people on that committee valued things such as they went to the Fenway opening day. It humanizes and brings a volunteer, a potential volunteer, to realize that could actually be me, that I could help do that. The other thing that's very important about about any volunteers, but I think we do a really good job with the Newmarket Conservation Commission, we don't just say, would you like to help, or would you like to serve on a board? And I hear this all the time with people saying, nobody's running, please run. It's not that big of a deal. It's one meeting, you can do it. People don't want to hear that. What they want to hear, it's one meeting a month, you've got some background in banking, it would be great if you joined this board. Then you feel like, oh, there's a skill I bring to it. Oh, you knew I did that. Oh, I can help. But it's counterintuitive when you're trying to convince somebody to do something. The way we tend to say it is, it's going to be really easy. You're going to like it. It's not going to take much of your time. Well, if it doesn't take much of my time, I can spend not much of my time doing something that I like better with not much of my time than promising to go to Town Hall or some other location. So you want to make it clear, what do you need and why do you need it? Turtle Fest for us was really interesting because we had the classic clipboard, and we've all done it. Here's a clipboard, sign in please, where, email address, where do you come from, what do you do, da. Well, this one we put like, what's your background? And from that, we have 2 new volunteers, and 2 new alternate commission members, a landscape architect and a wetland scientist. So it was really fun to have people really realize, I can bring something to this table. So from that, they each have their own group of people through their jobs, through their work, through their own professional contacts. So when it comes time in the fall to clean the birdhouses, or in the fall to do a migratory bird count, or in the fall to start talking about a warrant article to purchase a piece of land, those are people with professional backgrounds, or by professional I also mean an avocation where they can call upon people they know to say, hey, we are doing this on the Conservation Commission. So you have to have people understand, you come to the meeting, you sat there, you contributed, but who do you know that you can draw in to help us do this next big thing? And not to embarrass Patrick, but when Patrick was on the Conservation Commission, that was one of your super strengths, was we all got to work from our strength. You had Drew, who could go out there and say that that autumn olive tree has grown in 3 years. It's blocking this one boundary marker. He knew the property, and that was his thing. We all got to sort of say what we wanted to do. Patrick really fostered in me the ability to say, oh, yeah, I go to a lot of meetings at UNH, so here's a speaker we can bring in about, fill in the blank, vernal pools or butterfly counts or whatever it is. So we all got to contribute something or another that was valuable to the whole group. And I'm hoping to bring that back in a big way with the next fest. What are our volunteers? What are we going to be asking people to do? To pull off Turtle Fest again in its new form, we're going to need probably 25 volunteers. We had about 11 last time, so we're just going to need more. We are needing to cite, and one of the professional display booths said this to us, that they would have liked somebody assigned to them to help them just get in the building, not to just lug, but to help them get in the building, do a quick tour of the high school. Like, there's the bathroom, there's the coffee thing, this is where you can store your stuff when you're done, when you want to come hear a presentation. So that was something like, oh yeah, that makes sense. They do that all the time at really big national conferences. You have the guy that introduces the speaker, or that person's runner that finds the guy that's got the special cord that only one person has the key to the closet up. You need that runner that helps you in the building. And even though we think it's the high school and we've been there and it's only the lobby, well, it's only the lobby, but we needed the runners to be able to say, like, here's the 3 outlets are on this side. That side only has 1 outlet. So we need that familiarity piece. And I know there's some volunteers that are going to just feel like, I've got that skill. My kid's gone to that school for 5 years now. I was on the building committee for that school. I know where those outlets are. So we're really citing what do we need and who can help fulfill that need, right? And then why do people come? They come because their friend said it's going to be great. So that's page 2 for the most part. Our membership has volunteer realities and goals. So I think that's another strength. We are always working closely, and our budget is reflecting that we want to be able to send people to more training opportunities. through the municipal association. Although their events are inexpensive, we ought to be able to also offer people ultimately mileage reimbursement, which sounds like a small enough thing, but it should not be a requirement to be a volunteer that it's going to end up costing you, $45 to go somewhere and back, even if the event was free. So overarching goal is how do we make sure that we're respecting what is the expectation once you're a volunteer. It goes beyond like great banana bread and really good coffee when you show up in the morning to get your assignment. Let's see. Oh, building on previous successes. So I've touched upon that a little bit. The year before COVID, we had a day-long symposium. We partnered with the rec center, and that was about 5 volunteers. The rec center staff helped immensely. That was thanks to Amy kind of jockeying around what her staff budgeting was. Then there was the COVID deal, and then Turtle Fest comes built out of that. So, in fact, the first one got one of the awards for a nomination from the Newmarket Business Association for Best Event of the Year. So we look and we see who knows what, who can come talk to us about what, who can help train volunteers about what. And we're not going for a grant through the New Hampshire Council on Volunteerism. We're going to just do it in-house and have training sessions mirroring what CELT does. When you go to a CELT workshop, a CELT training session, and there's one coming up, and it's just remarkable. And on the one hand, it sounds so revolutionary. On the other hand, it's one of those things like, why not? Okay, it's this certain day. There's workshop 1, coffee break. Workshop 2, lunch. Workshop 3. Come for whichever ones you want. Stay for whichever ones you want. Come to one, have lunch, and go. You don't need to be there the whole day. But whichever ones you come to are also going to have a hands-on component. So you're not just going to hear about what's it like to go pull invasive weeds. We're actually going to go out on this property and pull some. So you get the training, you get the book knowledge, the practical knowledge, and then the hands-on knowledge. And a lot of training sessions up until that model have been, here it is, it's all day, workshop 1, workshop 2. And if you left, it was like, well, that was rude. Or you kind of like slither, stage a book closer to the door, and we've all done that. And they also are revolutionary in that you walk in, and it's not what you thought it was, so you just leave and go to another one. You don't have to like slink and hide. Just go. We're all grown up, so go where you need to be to get the knowledge you want, and that's something we're really trying to foster with our volunteers as well. We have a great relationship with the Newmarket Library. So, for instance, we have a book club with the Newmarket Library. We've done it now. This is the 3rd year in a row. Started out as just 4 months, and then it was 6 months, and now this group is coming up with a brand new way to do book clubs, which is a month is a book, the next month is a discussion group, the next month is a book, the next month is a discussion group. Because the group dynamic said we are all wicked busy. A month rolls around before you even know it. There's your month, and did you finish the book? I chair that committee, I chair that book group, and I make it real clear, if you haven't read the book, it doesn't matter. You certainly have an opinion about, these books are all conservation or bird watching books or whatever. You have an opinion about birds. You remember the first time you walked in, you made a trip to the Black Forest and you heard a cuckoo. We want to hear about your experience with birds as much as we care that you read and you can tell us what part of this book or what the author's style was. So it's almost like the schools that do no bake sales, because you make more money if you just send in the $10 with your kids than if you bake brownies late at night and send them in. So this is like a read the book, we hope you did, but you must have an opinion about the book. So come independently. The library is an outstanding job, and if Lauren was here, just like I cited Patrick, but Lauren does a thing for us she's our own personal Amazon flowchart. So this was one of our books. If we liked this book, maybe we like these. So she does these for us, and so it's her job, but it's really her own personality, because we've fostered this sense of who is she and what can she do for us. And people that aren't even in the book club send emails saying like, this was awesome, I can't come, I don't do that, blah, blah, my life's too busy, I do this, I don't work from home, I commute, blah, 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 but I read this and this and this. So these things for her, this is our current book, if you're interested, do join us. So that's the Lauren and the library piece. They also do the little movable typeboard out in front, which to me, feels really exciting because it's real letters, not a thing that's lit up at night. That's kind of a pet peeve. So somebody put the letters there that say Conservation Book Club, but we get so many comments about that. Really and truly, that's how the group is now about 16 people. One of those people was responsible for letting us know that their street, I can say it, Lady Slipper Drive, had a problem because there's so many turtle crossings there. And what does that mean? So many opportunities for turtle mortality incidents. So one of these book club members said, you know what, after everything you say and after the Conservation Commission wants to have more volunteers, I would volunteer to do this if I can. Can you buy the turtle crossing signs? We would like turtle crossing signs there. So that was a yes. That was an easy one. That was what we call quick wins. I used to work for the Department of Ed, and that was what a quick win. You blast into a school and say, change your bulletin board more frequently. It'll look fresher in your hall. That's a quick win, right? So a quick win. These signs are now up on Lady Slipper. Moreover, if you look at our last meeting, there was a lot of discussion on the turtle crossing signs. Should they be the kind that hinge and you open up, well, who's going to unhinge it? Who's going to hinge them? Oh, you hinge it down, there's a reflection on that little hinge. That bothers people at night, blah, blah, blah. Also, there was, and it's a fact, I mean, then there were several other people who said, oh, but you know what, there's the really cute turtle crossing signs with a big turtle and a little turtle. Can we get the cute turtle crossing signs? So I took pictures today. You will see them in next month's newsletter, e-newsletter of the turtle crossing signs.
It's going to be the big one and the little one.
Well, one direction is the big one and the little one. The other direction is just one because in the interest of time, when we went to order them, the cute ones were just about sold out. So we said, you know what, we got to do the crowd pleaser. We got to get the cute one, please the people, and we'll, you know, you need one for each direction. So this direction has the cute one. But in my article in the e-news, you will read that the cute one is cute, but be careful because it's also in a bed of poison ivy. So if you're saving turtles near the cute one, just put the turtles so far and avoid the poison ivy. The other one is kind of in someone's lawn, and they've mowed it and it's fine. You can, don't traipse on the lawn, but you don't have to worry about poison ivy if you're at the ordinary turtle crossing sign. But it felt really good to have somebody send an email and then in quick turnaround time, there we are. So I call that a volunteer effort. Out on a limb, here's this thing. The other thing you're going to see real soon is bike racks. We had enough feedback about can you or can you not get to several of our properties easily. One of them is landlocked. Is it not landlocked? Yada yada. Blah. Where do you park? How do you walk? What do you do? Forget all that. We were focusing on how do you get there? Where do you park? Then it was revolutionary. Who cares about parking? Ride your bike. Like we're the Conservation Commission. You know, this is Newmarket. It's beautiful. There's the water. There's the trees. There's kettling. Vultures, you know, so go out and take a real advantage. And how do we help you do that? Well, we're going to be installing several bike racks. Ultimately, we hope to have 6, but we worked with the school to find out what were the ins and outs of bike racks, what bike racks did you buy, where did you put them, why did you buy the ones you bought. So we weren't working in a vacuum just selecting bike racks, and none of us had any particular expertise in industrial bike racks, but it was great to get that advice from input from the school about what bike racks do you buy. So it's going to be a volunteer work day, again, yada yada, place the bike racks, and get some input, because I could go out and say, great place for a bike rack, but I'm not the one that would be riding the bike and have to like make the turn and put the bike rack, and if they're two-sided, is there enough space on that side for the bike rack? So it's soliciting input from experts that are going to be the end users. We don't want to come off as the software designer that has never used the sign-up registration system, and we want to make sure that if you ride your bike, it's going to be convenient and easy and in a great place for you to park your bike in these couple of places that are our inaugural places to park a bike. So those are the main things I think I wanted to say. If you have some more questions about volunteers, I think our successes have really been in marketing projects, asking people specifics, thanking the people who did whatever they did for us, and then asking those people what would they like to see next. We're the conduit. What the volunteers do is up to them, actually. We could brainstorm all we want, but we don't know who the people that want to do something are. Similar to the business work days. What, you know, they need direction, but they're getting off work to come do something. They can't fiddle around. They want a project that they can complete. We're looking to volunteers to say, here's what we'd like to do. Here's a need we perceive. How can we do it? And a great shout out, of course, goes to DPW, because we really have a great working relationship, primarily with Ellen being able to talk to Rick over the years the way she does, but between Rick and Karen and their skeletal crew, they're really great at what they do to help us have volunteers see, like, quick, we're Americans, we want quick, immediate results. We want the coffee, we want the donut, but we want the result, right? So those are the main things I wanted to say, I guess. Like I say, this this interest survey is going to be the things we work on for our coming fiscal year. We've got our budget all set, but we're going to see, starting next month, what do we want to do, what of these things do we want to tackle, and how do we want to do it. So once we see how many people are even interested in creating a database of interested residents, great. Now, this was anonymous, but who here wants to be on that committee, and how are you going to get volunteers to help you do that? For all I know, the volunteers are going to be your own senior and high school child and 2 friends who need to do a senior project. Who knows? I can't think of all the possibilities.
I think you highlighting the importance of collaboration and networking is so important. And that was something that Deborah talked about also, having that ability to network on a more regular basis. She talked about the Rec Connect event, and having more events like that throughout the year so that people on different committees can collaborate and talk, and I think just share information is so important. But the very first thing that you said, I think, is the most important, and
that's why I put it first.
Relates to the budget committee conversation that we had, is stop responding to decline. And that really resonated with me.
Thank you. And it's just so easy, because we can all talk about, oh God, woe is me. And there's far more people who aren't going to come and help than who are going to come and help. So just focus on the people who are going to come and help. And when you say, well, nobody wants to do it, what you're really saying is like, oh God, I don't even want to do it.
I think there's another thing in the, don't say it's easy, because I think that's like when you reduce the cost of something too much, no one buys it. It's like, make it like, this isn't easy, it's not going to be easy, but it's going to be important.
Right, and it's also okay to say it's going to be fun. Fun's not easy. And I was remiss, it's not going to be easy. This was revolutionary. This is our binder. It's the commission member notebook. So we give one of these to each new member, and then as our meetings go on, relevant documents come, we put them in here. So we avoid that whole thing with like, I didn't read the agenda, my husband drove my car, I had to drive his car, my bag is in, just have this here, have it somewhere, be able to grab it so you're the most effective member you can be. And the other thing is, this is golden. This is the handbook of the New Hampshire Municipal Conservation Commission. So it's 164 pages, that's great, but I call it a really wonderful handbook, because if you just go like this and open up any page, Conservation Commission, what they accomplish is directly related to the ideas and efforts of its members. Golden statement, pick a new page. Oh, federal wetlands programs. Historically, federal programs treat wetlands inconsistently. Nice. When you understand these basic things that are in this handbook, you don't have to like fret and stew and worry. You just say, okay, great. So federal things have been inconsistent. What do we need? What consistency do we need here more than ever because of rising water levels? Or should we plant eelgrass? Or what's the problem with greenheads if we plant too much eelgrass? Or, what's real estate going to be like? It's inconsistent what the feds are doing. It says so right here in this handbook. So what are we going to do about that? So this is something that is not yet in everybody's hand. It's online, but I can't read on a Kindle either. I want the thing that I can touch and look and see and feel. So we're going to see how many members want this handbook from the state association, and how many are just willing to know it exists, and they'll look at it online or reference it as need be. Thank you for noticing, like, yeah, it's not going to be fun. I mean, it's not going to be easy. It takes your skill. Like, if anybody can do it because it doesn't matter much, then you don't need me. Yeah.
Coming tonight.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. I should have started with that.
How is the current structure of Newmarket's town government working to support what you do? Is it, that's what I'm looking for, some commentary on.
Yeah.
Is the current structure help what the Conservation Commission does, or hinder it, or?
We're in a wonderful, I was going to say rising tide, but that's a negative thing nowadays. We're in a wonderful state of flux, because we have a new assistant, administrative assistant upstairs, Bridget, who works in Bart's office. So she's been assigned for now to be our note taker, minute taker, right? We're looking for another minute taker, but we're also gonna start new style of minutes, so it doesn't have to be the kind like planning board has with the legal line thing on the left side. We're gonna go back to regular minutes, so we hope that that opens up who might wanna take minutes to liberate some of Bridget's time. In the meantime, Bridget's our minute taker, and distributes minutes. Bart is assigned to be more present with the Conservation Commission, partially for land acquisition issues and any development on either end of town, where do those things abut conservation properties or potential properties or the storm runoff issues that could be created. So we need to be much more educated about stormwater management, for instance. And that will come from the planning board helping us with ways to get that kind of training and that kind of, not support so much, well, training is support, that kind of training so that we can really know if there's more development, what does that do to run off from pavement? And we're regulatory we're supportive, we can't enforce, but we could say, when we're asked advice, we could say, oh, we wish that you use different pavers, or we wish that the apron cut onto this road had those, I call them the 1950s pavers, like the kind of driveways that had like, because I can never remember pervious, impervious. So anyway, the old-fashioned ones that have grass and drainage inside, or the European style. So the support is really coming from the new ways that Bart and Bridget are working with the Conservation Commission. We have a couple of, right now Bart's out straight with the master plan, and Ellen is our rep to the master plan, and the revolution there came in asking other people about conservation and recreation, so they contacted Drew, who used to be on the Conservation Commission, and Lizzie Franceschini, who runs a lot of education programs through SELF for children and families. So that support, Bart getting to do intake from those two additional people for that part of the master plan has been huge. And for the rest, I'm not sure what other boards immediately come to mind. There'll be some cost incurred a little bit in the budget committee approving our nominal budget, but on the other hand, it's far more easy to argue and contemplate little dinky numbers than big numbers. So sometimes I think the little dinky number people kind of get like screwed in a budget conversation because people can really easily start quibbling about $500. What's the membership for? How, you really get $10 off the annual conference? Is it worth it? Well, it's also good neighbor Sam. Just pay the $500 to the association, and you never know when you might need legal representation by them or whatnot. So I would say, as things are, it's pretty good. Did that answer what you were looking
yeah,
for?
Yeah, follow up on it. So also what I'd be looking at is, so you raised an issue as the Conservation Commission. How do you feel? Do you feel like the structure of the town government that we have today is something that can respond to some issue or something that's important in the community that you guys identify because of your work that you're doing?
Mm-hmm.
The current structure provide that, to be responsive to an issue that you bring up?
That's a really good question. I think it goes back to the idea of empowering budget committee, empowering CIP. So, and I only can give the skeleton of this because it's in the works-ish, but for instance, to take a site walk. So we're really interested in having as many people as possible go on a site walk for land acquisition or a trail, revisiting a trail that's going to take time from DPW's schedule to go fix do bigger work on a trail. So a site walk would mean we have to really say, we are inviting you. This is an open, posted as a workshop or a meeting. You're, invited to come to this. Please come so you really see what we're asking you to do. We can't, raise and appropriate or change Rick's budget to go and put a certain kind of gravel somewhere. But if enough people on planning or town council or other groups could see that work, that support could be stronger and require less hypothetical discussion and more tangible discussion. So I think it's there. I think it just has to be a little more emphatic that when we say, if we build it, will you come, please come? If we invite you to come to something, please, come if you can. Or better yet, when can you? We can't just assume that, 4 o'clock's good for everybody, your kids are home from school, you give them a snack, you can leave them there for 40 minutes and come on the sidewalk. When's a good time to offer these kinds of things, to have the open house feeling so that people can come? And some of that's personality dependent, and some of it's really like, make it be the cool thing that the cool kids are doing, and then people will want to. And that comes into closing comments at a town council meeting. If a town councilor said, oh, I was able to go see, Neal Mill Road, the new hammerhead thing they built with the new banister, then other people on there might say like, well, actually I did something too. Or Neal Mill Road, I'll be darned, I could go there this weekend with my friend visiting from Kankakee. Talking about things makes it be the thing that people want to know more about. Like Instagram. Have you ever said in your life, I was today years old when I realized da-da-da-da. No, you don't say that, but have you been tempted to write it when you saw something cool on it? I was today years old when I saw blah, blah. Just what's your own thing, and how do you make it cool for people to do what you're asking them to do? I hope that answered it a little bit.
Thanks.
Yeah, I don't have anything to complain about.
Thank you again.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Well, you're welcome very much. I hope that helped.
Before we do anything else, I would entertain a motion to
Extend the
suspend
meeting.
rules to go past 9 o'clock.
Yeah, that's what I was doing.
Oh, I didn't know you had such a rule.
We do. That's all right. That's why we have it.
Second.
Did somebody make the motion?
Oh, I thought someone just did. Yeah, I'll make a motion, extend rule number 1 to stay after 9 o'clock to finish business.
And I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I really appreciate it. I think that was really great information.
Good. Well, thank you all for even volunteering to do this, because essentially you're volunteers too, so.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, we're not getting paid?
Yeah, I know.
I'm pretty sure.
It's $100 that the whole committee gets on supplies, right? And we'll get the thing.
So our next item of business is the communications update. And so Russ and John, I will look to you. What's up?
No, well, two quickies just to make note. I appreciate you sending all the information out to everybody. And what I think he or somebody edited to be the Newmarket communications plan. There were 2 typos or 2 things that should be corrected. One is, I think they said channel 13, and you said it was on channel 8. And the other thing, that I just want to make sure I got done, is we take enough heat as it is. There was a mention of the Moody Point Community Association, which was supposed to be stricken out of there and say that we're supposed to interface with community organizations and associations. And it's in that, what you said was the communication proposal. If you look at target audience, I think when we were speaking, I said as an example of a local organization, and you put in the organization rather than making it generic. Organization, residential associations is another group. I didn't think we were that special. So if you can change that. Other than that, we've asked for a draft. We were looking for your comments. I don't know if we've had enough time for everybody to take a look at the fact sheet as a start, and look at the one-pager as a start. We look at this as a living thing, number 1. This is just how to get this started, and then how to keep this updated would be one of the things we'd be asking the committee to say, how's that process going to work? And then I know John's point, and let him speak to it, is being able to promote this personally, a little bit of what we heard tonight.
Right, so we got the one pager, we got the frequently asked questions. I hope, everyone's looked at them. If they haven't, they should, and because we got to get rocking on it. Then the next part is how to get the word out.
So, so it's JPGR, the company we're working with, the social consultant. So they're doing the social media part of it. They're gonna go on all the different online things and put it on there. Then the rest is really up to the town, up to us. Things we've spoken about were, you know, obviously our local channel. Have it brought up at all board and council meetings. I brought up Shanda Park, if we are doing the concerts in the parking, and if we could have someone sit and volunteer and hand out, you know, the surveys, hand out the info, the senior center, the library. High schools, something happens at the high school almost every Sunday. I hope it's Newmarket people using our school. I can't find out what's going on there.
No, what is that?
I've seen musical instruments go in there. Once I saw people dressed up, it looked like maybe from the 1920s. So there's a lot of events happening there. Hopefully it's us, and we could have a booth there or a table there, or just pick up a pamphlet there. The Backyard Bash in August, obviously we had 1,000 people there last year. I think we should have a table there and hand out, talk to people. Those are just some of the ones I'd come up with, but you know, we need some help.
The only thing I could even add to that is I didn't know if anything from either you or the committee, Tony, to all the other committees, either school committees or either town committees, that just goes to the president saying, please put on your, you know, just mention in your agenda that the committee
And then the electric.
We're looking for input, we're looking for people to engage, because that won't get to a whole new group.
And the electric boards too, like the one that we move around and the one at the school, certainly, we should at least tell people to go to the site, tell people, you know, what's happening. So, again, the October 31st date is gonna be here before we blink, so we need to, October 30th, preliminary report due, so that's where we're at. If we can get feedback on the frequently asked questions and the one pager, so we can get that out, and it's the how's it getting out that we need to really all focus on.
Rather than when to change it, should that be something, I mean, I hope we're not looking for John and I to be able to say, well, we'll keep this updated from what we see is happening in the meetings. I'm not sure I have that professionalism or desire. Plus, it's what the committee decides, but how to say, okay, this will be there for the next 2 weeks. Here are the 3 things we want to change as a result of tonight's meeting that updates the fact sheet or whatever. That process, I think, needs to be worked out as well. But I think what we started with is, with your comments, enough to get you started in the next week, so at least we start to get some mechanisms.
I thought the FAQ looked great. The one question was just the last, if there's a contact, you know, who at what email address and who that should go to.
That was my question as well. I don't know how much you want to be the focus as the chairperson or not the chairperson.
Right.
And when it comes to updating technology, be it in the newsletter or sending out emails, we haven't really discussed that method. I honestly don't know how it works. Either we depend on Steve or the school through some administrative contact to get into their...
To send out like a mass email? Is that what you mean, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know all the facilities we have, and I'm sure we're not gonna use the emergency phone call saying the Newmarket is flooded. But beyond that, how do you get beyond the newsletter in town or the website?
Attached.
Okay, and so like if you send a note, or I don't know, if Steve has a process where he can send either the department heads or the commission chairs something on saying, if you mention.
When you guys met, was there any talk of?
Not specifics. There were a lot of ideas generated. We were looking to present those to you and to get your feedback, but then how to actually get it implemented. I don't know how much we can use Steve and Wendy. I don't know if there's 3 other people we need to contact who have.
Steve was gonna follow up on one thing. He knew matter of factly, it couldn't go out with tax bills, because we've already missed that anyway. I had showed them something that I thought it could go with other, water and sewer, and that's only, a percentage of the town anyway. But if they're coming out, it's almost freebie if you throw it in there. But I think it's going to be all these things. It's not going to be just one thing. I think we have to hit everything we can, but the mailing is certainly, we have a mailing list of every taxpayer, and not looking to add postage to everything, but I think we need to hit every single option we have to try to reach everybody.
I can
And
take it on to follow up.
do we want to use the company for that, the publicity company, saying, let's work out a structure where we send it to them and they'll go to the 6 or 7 different places we need?
My fear was, if I saw it with letterhead of Bob's marketing company, it's going right in my recycling. If it came with a Newmarket envelope, I'd at least go, what's going on? But anyway.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm happy to take that on, to follow up with Steve about doing a mailer. So we would mail the one-pager, is that the idea?
Mail on the one pager, I thought we were doing the frequently asked questions too.
Well, I think that was the idea, that the QR code would go to the frequently asked
Oh, okay.
questions.
That's
my
gonna be on.
understanding.
I thought the QR code was, at least the way it was presented,
Brought you
was
to the
the
site.
survey.
Well, I guess we gotta find that out, because I thought the QR code brought you to the site,
Yeah. and
which
they
tells you
didn't-
all these things.
They didn't do the
Oh,
fact
right,
links.
you're
of
right,
it.
to the site, I think.
Right, and then I think all those things are on the site, or would be on the site.
Tony, you might want to check with Bart, with the master plan, communication plan that they used. What did they have
Oh, that's a good
the
idea.
most success with? Because they did the same
Oh,
thing. They
that's
reached
right.
out in a variety of ways to people, and what was the most successful way? Because that might give us an idea of where to focus our effort. They did mailings, they did emails, they did QR codes, they did all of those things, I know. I think they did like a postcard size mailing. Yep.
I'll reach out to Bart. I think that, I agree that this is very time sensitive, so I'll reach out and then send an email. I don't know, I have to figure that out, how we can make a decision prior to our next meeting, which is in 2 weeks, which I think is kind of too late. I'll think on that a little bit.
Well, what
How to do it
What I'd say
while
at this
respecting
point, and
RSAs.
I think they were, we've all been scattered, and so the publicity guy's been on vacation, and
Right,
someone else was
it's 4th
putting
of
it.
July.
But it seems to me that if everybody likes the one pager, we can at least get that in the newsletter and the website. But I know with John and myself, I'm concerned about breaking 14 rules and having a meeting with 3 people and doing this and doing that. So, but I think the webpage, I think the fact sheet as it is at least the start.
Absolutely.
And if we leave it there for the next 3 months and never change it, at least we gave it a shot. But if we then can get a follow-up mechanism for how to keep that updated. And should that be us as a committee voting on what gets in there, or that's the thing, where if we're asking people to write stuff for us, should we ask the publicity people, here's a, should you say or we say, take the minutes and see what you can come up with, or here's a conversation for 10 minutes or every 2 weeks on what I think the issue should be, update something like that. Is that you, is that us? That's where
Tony,
Yeah.
trying to pack this together. So we don't want to wait till the next meeting to make this happen.
To at least get the ball rolling, I think.
Well, you talked about getting together with Bart and getting together with Steve to get ideas as to the best way to do it, this postcards and so forth. Once you get that information, there are 8 things that will be affected. There'll be 8 great ideas. Can't we at that point just say you go? I mean, that would be my recommendation.
Can't we what?
Just say to her, go. Do,
There's nothing, if this group here likes this, there's nothing that doesn't prohibit us for this not being in the senior center next week at the library
that's-
next
that's-
week
my
on our
point.
local channel
There's a bunch
next
of
week.
stuff we
just
can
do
do now.
it, just do
Yeah.
it. So Bart says, post.
Getting it out, you're fine with me working with
Absolutely.
Steve to get it,
I,
to push it out.
I don't think there's an alternative unless we schedule another time to get
Yeah,
together.
yeah.
And
I mean,
I,
we could meet every week, but I think that's too much.
yeah.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
like
getting
you guys,
it,
but not that much.
getting it in the newsletter, getting it like out posted in public places,
Bart's
like,
input,
that's all, like,
Steve.
I think the question really becomes cost of mailing it and like, can we do
Well,
that?
whether it's mail or whether you're saying it's gonna be on the website, it'll be in the
I think we
newsletter
could-
that
we
comes
could
out.
do-
Those are a given, yeah.
This should be given.
Yeah.
I think we can.
Okay. And
Bart
then,
nailed it.
if you're saying have something from the minutes, whether it's, I have no problem empowering you saying if we have the minutes that we just distributed, if there's one or two updates, whether it's through a mechanism with John or I or whatever, I don't wanna overstep bounds or anything like that, but we should be able to come up with one or two things from every 2-week meeting that we may wanna add to the fact sheet.
I agree, Phil, about the postage. I never like adding costs to the town. That's why I say the school, the electric board that Mr. Hamel donated to us at the school, they don't, and, you know, even that one we move around, the bridge is gonna be closed. Just tell them, hey, go to the site, do this.
Yeah.
Again, we gotta do, a lot of these things are free and simple, the senior center, this library, the, you know, the, down the road, the backyard bash will be simple.
Well,
Any
but-
town council meetings, any board meetings, I mean, there's,
I will say, John, it's not down the road. It's just a few weeks away.
oh, correct.
So
correct.
and that's the thing, and with Shandon Park.
No, I meant backyard bash, it's the end of August,
I
this
know.
stuff can be doing
No,
next
it's,
week.
it's, it's the 1st of August.
Oh, is it this year?
Yeah.
It's like after our next
It's
meeting.
August 1st.
Oh, well, you know, that helps, actually.
Yeah.
And
So that's my point, we gotta,
Yeah, no, it's
Figure it
usually
out.
generally later in August.
yeah,
Yeah.
and same with the arts in the park, they've already started. I think tonight was the second one, so if we wanna do something as early as
Right.
this week, we just need the manpower to do it.
Yeah, I think, and John, I know we're all conservative, but I think mailing is the right way to do it. I really do. I think we can find have Steve find a few bucks for us.
We'll see, we'll
Do
see
you
how
need
much it's gonna
help?
cost, and
Yeah.
I'll reach out to
Do you
him.
need help with this, or
Yeah.
it's probably easier just for you to do yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's, yeah.
Meeting with Steve, meeting-
Yeah.
If you need help,
And then,
yeah.
I will also send out sign-ups for this group for the upcoming
Yep.
concerts
Yep.
and Backyard Bash,
Yep.
and then we can go.
Yeah, and
from
if we
there.
could sign up, if people, a couple people could sign up to sit at a table and just talk a little bit, I'll certainly sign up one, I'm not trying to volunteer other people.
Yep.
Yeah, if we get
We'll
the
make
dates
some
on that,
copies
we
and
can
get some
commit to
surveys
spend an
printed.
hour at a table and,
So we may get something out next week? As early as
I
next-
think so.
Yeah, I do.
Steve was ready, I think Steve, was able to get it out pretty quickly as long as
Yeah,
he gets the okay.
yeah.
Yeah, and in addition to, I don't know how many people go to the website and get the newsletter, but you also have a mailing list from the newsletter that says you want to send out just that one pager to the mailing list that gets the newsletter as a separate email from Newmarket, that it's colorful, it's got a couple of key things, and maybe saying, stay tuned for more information, but that would get in somebody's inbox outside the newsletter.
I don't know how many people have those.
I haven't had the chance to ask Steve or the distribution list on what that is.
Yeah, what about the school
That would
communication?
be free. And the same thing with the school, that's,
Send it out through those channels.
Yeah.
There's really only two things, right? There's the sign
or
across
maybe
the
Tony
street.
putting a note on that from
wherever
you
mailing
to
list
the
is,
committee
and
chairs.
Superintendent.
Or from Steve, that just says, here's a one-pager announcing, could you mention this at your next
Someone
meeting?
got this thing twice in zero times.
If I put
Or
some
four.
stuff together, and
Yeah, get
forward
them
it to
3 times and flip them in 3 times.
work with Todd.
So,
Great.
only one thing
I do.
in the FAQ that I noticed, but what form of government will be considered? New Hampshire has 4 forms of municipal government. I mean, just of which we're gonna choose one.
Yeah.
I thought that was, I don't want anyone coming away with the impression it can be all 4. It's a small thing, but it jumped out at me that we do have to pick one.
There's also like, I mean, there's also kind of like 4 and a half, because that council form of government, there's like the council that does everything, like Durham. There's the council that.
Council of the mayor,
doesn't
council.
have, like, for the budgetary items come to us, which is halfway between Durham and the traditional SB2, because it's the council, not a select board.
Well, it's also the point of getting their attention. You know, if something like that may get people's attention, then the question is, can you herd it in the right direction and channel it? But I think the one pager gets it started. I think the fact sheet gets it started. The more we can do an internal distribution to, whether it's department heads, committee chairs, whatever, that says, please give this a mention at your next meeting. Forgive the language, we're just getting people up to mind. But at least
Right.
For the backyard bash, we're gonna do a table. If we want people to come and interact with us, we have to have an activity.
Yeah.
I sat at tables a number of years there. If you don't have something, nobody will stop at your table, because they're there to do something, they're there to be entertained. So we have to come up with something interactive that will draw them in, and while they're waiting in line to do that activity, you chat them up about the Charter Commission and ask them questions to see. Have some candy in the bowl. We have to do these things, or we won't, people will just walk on by. They're like, I'm going to the beer tent, I'm going to, you know, a fishing tent over here, whatever activities are there.
Really good point.
We wanna interact with them, do something.
Is it beer
So you're
and
willing
charter
to take
commission?
that on?
I'll help with that, absolutely.
All right.
Well, I'm saying
But I'm
if
gonna
it-
draft volunteers to
Yep.
be at the table with me.
Patrick, if it's beer, food, and charter commission, we get some people in there. If we're competing against those other 2 things, I think it's gonna be a long day.
No,
No.
but once they've had the beer, they might be more interested in coming over to your table to do your activity.
I think if they heard the discussion tonight, that we all were surprised about the budget committee and CIP. that-
Did you realize?
I feel like today's just my time of life right now, but you do something that's gonna draw the kids in, and then while the parents are standing there waiting for them to finish the thing,
That's
when you talk to the
that is the
parents.
option, yeah, we could do that.
Okay, you give that some thought.
I will.
For activities.
I
I will send out the, you know, an email asking people what their availability for
Okay.
those events.
Does it make sense that if we just get something started now, that gets something out? I think the ones that we're talking about at organizations and meetings, like this got a little exciting time where I thought we got to somebody meet quite by our surprise. Where this will go, but a month from now, okay, as you're starting to get into the beginning of August, I think is when you'll have more to say, because we'll have another meeting or 2.
Yeah, and next week, or next meeting, Bart will be here, and Val, to talk about master plan and planning.
Right. So I think if we get something out now that just gets that mechanism in place, and then say it may be 2 or 3 or 4 weeks before we have a meaningful update, where we have something to say.
And then we'll have to start to think about some of the things that we heard tonight, what we hear, you know, at our next meeting, and kind of what direction we want to go in.
As an aside, I happened to bump into Todd this week, and
Sally or
Alan, and talk about what we were doing and so forth. He has some excitement about sharing his thoughts with us, big time, about budgets and so forth, so,
Can we invite them?
We could.
yeah, Todd Allen.
Superintendent.
Superintendent. I'll save the summary till he comes here, but he's very interested in this process.
There's a little bit of me this will show my age probably, but if I said Jack Webb, just the facts maybe, just the fact. I'm not sure Stephen had everything right, but he was probably righter than some of us thought who were on the committees. I'd love to get a fact sheet out on what we actually have here in detail. Is it we always had the power and nobody ever told us, or no, you really don't have the ability to do that? Somewhere we're going to have to find out what, at least important to me, is what's the basis of fact of what power the CIP and the Budget Committee have, regardless of how we use it before. That would make me feel comfortable, and I hate to use the word legal opinion or something like that, but I'd really like to know what the basis of the power and the reach of each of those committees is.
Legal interpretation.
To me, if we don't, we can't fix the process because.
Like he's coming from the place where they would know it the best.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's the place I would go for.
That was always my understanding of what he described was always my understanding of how the Budget Committee worked, or was supposed to.
Well, I hear you,
Yeah,
but
same.
there's 3 or 4 people from the Budget Committee that worked for years and said we really didn't feel that would, whether it was
But that's more
inertia.
Right.
But I think it's,
All I know is I don't believe anybody sat down from me when I started this and say, here's what you have as a Budget Committee.
No, that's the truth, but I mean.
That might be one of the problems.
So I think one of the things I wrote down was, not to belabor this anymore, is that how do we codify somehow in the charter, or is there some way, it's probably more policy, about the education of people coming aboard these commissions, and we try, like, how critical that is to them knowing what the rules are.
Yeah.
yeah,
I see that as policy.
Policy, it's policy, I know, right? It's not within our purview, but
but I think you're right. I mean, I remember on the council, the town administrator would come in and explain to council what their roles were. That doesn't happen on the
It's not just as
All right.
interpretation.
way over.
So you have any
I gotta, my marching orders. Is there any other new business? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Nice job, Tony.
Oh, thanks.
You